It's nice to see so many coats being worn in here today. I can't think why. Anyway, good afternoon. Can I remind members please to switch off their mobile phones? Which reminds me at this particular point that there was a mobile phone found on the floor earlier on. Gillian has got it. If that member realises they've lost their mobile phone. Under Council Procedure Rule 15.1, I would like to move a motion without notice that agenda item 8, which is the Leaders Cabinet arrangements, be taken before agenda item 7, Cabinet Member Reports. Is the motion without notice seconded?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. The first agenda item on the Council summons is to receive disclosure by members of interest in matters under consideration. Will members declaring an interest please identify themselves and their particular interest clearly and complete the usual yellow form before the end of the meeting? Right, thank you. Councillor Glover?
Can I interrupt? Jimmy Marshall, I have a question you committing indictable offences.
Sorry, this is a council meeting. Sorry, this is a council meeting, and no people.
I'll be out there serving indictments on you. And that goes for you, Neil Warren, too. So you are now under arrest and you must submit to it. If you don't, then you'll be brought for arrest.
Thank you. Can you please leave the chamber? Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Can we continue, please? Not that, so not what I was doing, what that was all about. Right, council tax, thank you. Right, so. Anything else? Oh, sorry, we'll come back to you.
I'm really interested in agenda item 13.
Right, thank you. 13, thank you. Anybody else? Are there any other significant other interests to be declared? Are there any other interests to be declared? Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 17 motions, just wish to declare for transparency that an employee of the trade union in relation to Councillor Collins' motion is all out.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, just following on from Councillor Mayor, also employed by trade union.
Yes,
Those members who wish to declare a similar interest would raise their hand. We can record that.
okay. Right, if anybody else wants to declare that as an interest, just raise your hand and then we'll record it in the normal way. Okay, thank you. Right. Agenda item 2 is to receive and confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 16th of November 2022. Are these minutes moved?
Move the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Are the minutes seconded?
Second the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
All in favour? Right, that is carried. The next item on the agenda is to receive apologies for absences. In advance of the meeting, apologies have been received from Councillors Akbar, Garbett, Mrs. Pat Garbett, Owen, Sharp, Mummersley, Hunt, Taylor, Stockhill and Councillor Gordon. Councillor Kitchen and Councillor Heptonstall have indicated they will need to leave the meeting early. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Johnson as well.
Thank you. Yes? Sorry, can you put Jack down here?
I have to leave at 5 o'clock when you finish.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Right. Yes, Councillor Graham?
Sorry, Mayor, I could be wrong. Before that person arrested people, you moved a motion to move item 8. Were we taking that or is it coming up?
Yeah. It will come up, yes.
Right, okay, well, thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm afraid that obviously that interruption has kind of sort of set things in a slightly different, so let's try and pull it all back together again now. Alright, agenda item 4 is to deal with such announcements as I may decide to lay before Council. As this is our first council meeting of the year and decade, I would like to wish you all, I would like to wish you all a belated, happy and peaceful new year. I also need to note that there is a technical issue at this moment with the live streaming, so although the meeting is being recorded, it will be uploaded later. Since our last meeting, the Mayoress and I had a busy time supporting the district with many and varied Christmas activities, switching on the lights, carol services, Light Up the Life memorial services, winter concerts, pantomimes, care home visits and supporting the homeless. I would like to say, really, the overwhelming message is how many fantastic volunteers we have that really make a difference to the lives of people in this district, and we see this time and time again in our visits. It is truly an amazing district, and it's great to be the mayor and meeting all these fantastic people. I'd also like to add that there will be an out sale for the Pakistan floods sometime in the spring to recognise and make some contributions. Since January the 1st, we've had the opportunity to spend time with Patrick Kearns, one of our deputy lieutenants, who showed us around the police treatment centre, a facility supporting those who are injured or have become ill while serving or after retirement. We continue to support the Mayor's Thanks Awards with the presentation of numerous certificates, namely a presentation to Dawn Bland for her voluntary work with Spectrum People, creating artwork and poetry to raise awareness of mental health and childhood trauma, and also to the volunteers of Pontefract Hospice who work tirelessly supporting the terminally ill in our district. And that was certainly a very memorable afternoon. On the topic of the Mayor Says Thanks Award, I'm very pleased to welcome Adam Fleming to today's meeting. Adam plays for Wakefield Trinity Physical Disability Rugby League and recently played in the Physical Disability Rugby League World Cup for England held in Warrington. New Zealand and Australia. Adam scored 3 tries during the tournament, and what makes Adam unique is that he holds down a full-time job, working for this authority. Whilst achieving this, I am therefore Mayor Says Thanks Award to our own very world champion. Right, finally, colleagues, on behalf of the Council, may I offer congratulations to everyone who received recognition in the King's first New Year's Honours List, including from our district, Jane Reid, who received an OBE, and Richard Holmes, Chris Kamara, Ruth Kerry, and Rachel Whittaker for receiving an MBE. And, not forgetting our own very own Vicky Schofield, Corporate Director, who received an MBE for services to children and young people. Well done, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, and that concludes my announcements. As there's been no deputations have been received for today's meeting, we will now move on to agenda item 6, which is the Leader's Report. Once the Leader has presented her report, she will receive comments or answers to any questions from members on the matters raised in her report. A maximum of 30 minutes will be allowed for her report, followed by 30 minutes for questions and answers. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad you mentioned people in this district who got the honour, and I'm sure they were all well deserved. But I just want to add my congratulations to Vicky. What Vicky says when we tell her how proud we are, she always says it's for all of us, because of what we've all done and what we've all put together for children's services, and especially Beyonce Wagner as well. But you're very modest, Vicky, because you have done such a lot for us, and we're very proud. And I'm looking forward to seeing you posh brought for the palace. The abseil for the Pakistan flood, which David has agreed to sponsor, I think would be great, and I think if many of us who are fit enough, and I will do it myself if I can get up the stairs, you know. But I understand it's quite a feat, I can't say it's quite a feat getting up the stairs, but I am determined to have a go to support you in the project, so we'll see. So if I'm doing it, the rest of you can do it. I'll all of you. Just we've got a report about changes to Cabinet for the moment. I'm taking on for 6 months the region and economic growth in place of Darren. I'd just like to thank Darren for all the work he's done over the years. It's been great. He's decided to step back and we should be looking at a refreshing Cabinet in May. Darren is not going away though, and we will be recommending Darren to be the Deputy Mayor in May. So we're all very pleased about that. We're in tough times. We've all been a bit choked, but we're in tough times. The budget has been very tough and we should be having a budget meeting very soon. And I just wish the government would give us more opportunity. Every year, it's just a 1-year settlement, putting a sticking plaster on it, when if we had a 3-year, we'd be much better placed to sort our budgets out. So obviously we'll be coming back with the budget. At the moment it's gone out to consultation with other political parties and with the wider public. So we'll see what people say about that. Antisocial behaviour was raised at the last meeting, and I've had a series of walkabouts with Alison Lowe, the Deputy Crime and Police Commissioner, and Nick actually mentioned in Ossett that there was a problem. We will be in Ossett on Saturday morning talking to people and seeing what we can do. And some of you may have read in the press, and I was a bit surprised to read it myself, that we've all agreed to support a new Welcome to Yorkshire. Well, this council hasn't supported that, and we haven't even had the discussion. So if anybody's thinking we've agreed something, we haven't. There will be some discussion, and we will have to make a decision on whether we want to do that. But it did say in the Yorkshire Post that there'd been a meeting, and it had all been agreed. Well, that's not the case for Wakefield. I just wanted you to know on that. And I think that's all from me.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Ames.
Thank you, Chair. My first address as leader of the Conservatives. I should be making this to Elton John's music, I'm Still Standing. Let's hope I last longer than my predecessors. May I first offer my congratulations to Vicky Schofield. Enjoy your day in the Palace. Make a weekend. We appreciate the reflective glory. Very well done. Thank you. We will be saying goodbye to Councillor Gordon, but he's absent at the moment. I feel the Chamber will be a less colourful place in his absence. I have absolutely no doubt that Tom will re-emerge as Liberal MP for Chipping Sodbury or somewhere else in the Shires. It's all be. Getting back to the Council Leader's address, their forward plan, their assurance of value for money.
Hold on, sorry, Councillor, please sit down, please. Councillor Howard's issued a point of order. Please sit down. Councillor Howard.
Can you turn your mic? The Conservative group leader has gone on a rant, but it seems that he doesn't understand what he's supposed to be doing, because he's supposed to be addressing issues raised in the leader's report, not going on his own personal diatribe.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Howard, I accept your point of order. Can you please focus on the leader's report, please?
Pardon?
Please focus on the leader's report.
That's the last one and the last one.
Thank you, Councillor Homewood. Thank you.
Getting back to the leader's address, the forward plan, the assurance of value for money and the obligatory demand that the government supply more funding for her to achieve this. Regrettably, there's no apology for wasting £7 million on a school with a leaky roof, or the emerging news that the sale of an empty property has resulted in another £2 million now being poured literally down the drain in Featherstone. More to come on that one. With a few changes to the cabinet, a new independent group in the chamber, we're still waiting for Wakefield community to make a real change. Perhaps the continuing rate rises and waste of essential funding during the cost of living crisis will finally convince them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions? Councillor Owen.
I've got to ask the leader, in preparation of the report, why there is no mention of the wonderful land sale in Featherstone that's cost the ratepayers of Wakefield 2.6 million. I am talking about the leader's report here because I'm asking how she arrived to it. And whilst I accept that that problem wasn't her fault personally, but there's people in this council whose fault it was, and somebody needs to see some heads rolling. That's £2.6 million, if I believe what my friends at the Wakefield Express tell me, I'm sure they're accurate. But, you know, can the leader tell us why there's been no mention of that?
Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to thank the leader of the council for the Ossett Library. As promised last year or 18 months ago, you said you'd get the asbestos out. So I'm really appreciative, I'm sure myself and the two of the councillors are. I look forward to being marketed properly. And also thank you for the Ossett Town Hall, and also thank you for the getting the deputy police commissioner into Ossett. Unfortunately, unlikely I'll be there, but I'd like to pass on the thanks for doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, Tony, I've mentioned it because I've asked the Chief Executive to do an inquiry into what happened at Featherstone. It's not acceptable and it will have to be looked into properly, and then we should come back here. Councillor Haynes, you're absolutely obsessed with Sandal Magna. Yes, and I know it was wasted money, but why do you raise it here and never raise it when you go to the Governance and Audit Committee? You don't mention it there, but you mention it here to make a political point. We had an inquiry, we went to law, and we were awarded costs. These things are not acceptable, of course they're not, but you can't keep raising the same thing over and over again. And with the Featherstone issue, we are having another inquiry. Yes, it's not good that these things have happened, and somebody will be accountable, I assure you, for that. Both of you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So happy New Year, colleagues, and also officers at the back, and congratulations to Vicky. It is a Chinese New Year actually on Sunday, and I'd like to invite the leader of the council to join me to say a Happy New Year to those residents living in our district with Chinese heritage, and in particular to those Hong Kong BNO passport holder coming to settle with us. And I will say, 恭喜发财, 新年快乐. So talk about a prosperous rabbit year, and we need to talk about growth and talk about leveling up. So will the leader of council reconsider to make the council Biber's role to locate for so long, because we cannot level up, we don't have a leveling up portfolio holder. So I think that this position should be fulfilled much sooner than 6 months. Thank you.
Well, we actually have got a portfolio hold because I should be doing it until then.
Okay. Right, thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Oh, sorry, Councillor Eastwood.
Thank you. I mean, could I, first of all, thank the leader for calling this inquiry about what's happening in Featherstone. But could I just say that the alternative is absolutely disastrous. If this work isn't done, we've got a sports centre, we've got a swimming pool, and we've got a school, obviously, forms in place which is for school. So the alternative of not doing the work, and I appreciate there's probably been some mix-up or whatever's happened, I don't know how we finish with that information. But it's all right, you'll keep bleating all that, Sandal Magna and all that stuff. All right, there's been mistakes made, and the leader said this is going to sort it out. I mean, just the other day, I've also heard the governors on that school, and watched the no swimming pool getting built, as well as the sports centre is getting built. But to try and put that into any sort of danger, let's just blame him or just blame her for it. That's ridiculous. I'm just pleased that the work will be done, and then the school, the sports centre, and the pub can continue as it is, very successfully. I just feel I need that point, because if you're going to start every week, I'm going to start every week. I believe me not.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Isherwood. Right, that's everybody on the report. Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Right, following the motion without notice, we will now take agenda item 8, the Leader's Cabinet Executive Arrangement Report. Is the report moved? Thank you. Report seconded?
Second the report.
Right, are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Right, that is carried. We'll now revert back to Council Summons as published. Agenda item 7 is the Cabinet Member Reports. Cabinet members have up to 5 minutes to present their reports, and there are further 15 minutes allocated to enable each Cabinet member to respond to any questions or brief comments on matters within their portfolio. The first report is from Councillor Jeffrey, Leader and Portfolio Holder for Regeneration, Economic Growth and Property. Councillor Jeffrey, would you please introduce the report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying in this report to include publicity really about across the district so that everyone gets a turn, and even, as I say, I even mention of the town hall. But two of the things I do want to point out is the fact that great investment is going into the South East at the Backstage Academy. Millions of pounds will be going there to do the launch of Explore, and also Tariel North. Those of you who went to the Christmas event who saw it open for the first time, it just shows how much business in investment is going into our district. The other thing that's not in my report that I wanted to mention, because I took it to Cabinet yesterday, is some time ago the controlling group wanted to build our own council houses and across the district. Now we weren't able to do that, so we went into partnership with WDH, and what we agreed yesterday was to put 2.29 million ring-fenced affordable 106 agreement schemes into 4 projects across the district, one in Havercroft, one in Pontefract, one in Wakefield and one in Castleford. And this really is our legacy to move forward with social housing across the district, working with WDH. And in Pontefract we have a site, the fire station site, which is nearly completed, and I will be handing the keys over to the residents in a week's time. So working together in partnership, we have delivered social housing that we wanted to perhaps do on our own, but we weren't able to do that. But perhaps that's for the future. With that, I'm moving.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any questions or brief comments? Councillor Haynes.
As a member of the Planning Committee, I can remember approving 34 houses at Featherstone, and the approval for these houses was a condition number 7, that before this scheme could be brought into fruition, the approved drainage scheme had to be implemented. Can you explain why this requirement on the developer has now been funded by the authority up to the tune of £2 million?
No, sorry, I can't. I don't know about the drainage scheme, but we will find out for you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fishwick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I have an update, please, on the purchase of the golf house and what's happening with the Travelers site down in Heath Common, please, as part of the regeneration, if possible, could I have the thoughts? Thank you. the golf house and the Travellers site, the regeneration is going on down at Heath Common, please. Thank you.
No decisions have been taken on that yet, and it's progressing. We should be coming back as soon as we have any further information. But it needs to be looked at properly before we commit ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Bird.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask if we've any updates on the levelling up from Nottingham. I appreciate that's not in your hands to give us the exact answer, and it's the government that keeps delaying it, if you've got any knowledge on that. And also, I noticed that the calendar club that we were discussing at Cabinet yesterday got pulled because the report full of inaccuracies. Do you know when we're going to get an accurate report for that? Also, I keep getting promised that I'll be seeing the plans for it, which I've still not seen. So, can I see them, please?
Yeah, on the levelling up, we're expecting news in the next few days. It was supposed to be December, and it was put back to January, but I think we should hear very soon. So I know we're all hoping for the best, and to hope that we get all three schemes that I know you're particularly keen on the Nottingham one. The report was pulled yesterday, deferred, because of the new legislation that came out on the 4th of January about how much funding needed to be referred, and the report wasn't satisfactory, so I asked for it to be taken off the agenda and re-looked at, revisited, and then we should be bringing a paper back in February. And as to the plans, I'll make sure that all three local members get the plans.
Thank you.
Councillor Tully.
Can I thank the leader in that small role that she's got to do. The issue of the industry is working really well. The backstage centre is absolutely fabulous for my part of the work. It's really pushing, obviously, the university status and looking at including updating our local railways, our bus roads, and other things we want to do. And as well as as well, we've had a decent uptake on shopfront grants, which, because unlike I want to spend a lot of my time as a district council working in the ward that I represent, making sure that our high street remains active, remains vibrant, and we do what we need to do in putting new shopfronts in grants is part of that successful long way it did. The only issue we have sometimes is over in the enthusiastic traffic wardens, but that's for another day.
Any other questions or comments? I think Councillor Haynes. Yes.
Okay. Just a quick one, Denise. I was disappointed, as well as young will have been, about the failed bid to attract Rolls-Royce into Wakefield. Have you got a strategy that we can implement to make Wakefield more attractive, being as we have to compete against Leeds nearly for everything, and we seem to get more? I'd like to see some worthwhile jobs coming into Wakefield, and it appears that we keep falling at the post. Can you suggest a strategy that would improve that?
Yeah, on the Rolls-Royce at Nottingham, I know myself, colleagues and Nottingham members were very disappointed that we were down to the last three and then it didn't happen. But there may be some offshoots on that. They are looking at bringing another part of the Rolls-Royce, and we may well have a success there. But I think you'll have seen from the report that we are attracting jobs. We've just talked about the South East, we've just talked about Wakefield itself, we have the master plan. But I don't want anybody to be any doubt that when I go to West Yorkshire, and when other colleagues go to West Yorkshire and represent us on different committees, we do fight our corner. I get very tired of being in the shadow of Leeds. We're a special district, we've got so much to offer, and I'm making sure that we are giving most consideration. We were very successful with the Towns Fund money and the levelling up for Castleford and Wakefield, and let's hope that we do get the levelling up for the other 3 bids. But there is a lot of things we want to do, and I think if we all pull together and talk up our district, we will have great success.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. If somebody's got the phone, can you just make sure it's switched on silent, please, because it's very distracting. Thank you. Right, if there's no further questions or comments for Councillor Jeffrey. The next report is from Councillor Hemingway, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Climate Change and Environment. Councillor Hemingway, can you please introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also take this opportunity to wish all members a happy new year. And I hope it's going to be a good one with lots of success and productivity in this chamber. I also want to thank Councillor Wakefield for his service to the Cabinet. He's done a great job, and I'm sure he'll be a fantastic councillor in their district in the not-too-distant future. I want to start by paying tribute to the Council's Arbour team. They've been out over the last week or so responding to a number of quite dangerous incidents with high winds, where we've had about 20 trees and large branches that have come down on public highways and footpaths, causing potential risk. We've got out and responded really quickly, cleared the obstruction, and got the city moving again. So I just want to thank the Arbour team for the difficult job they do, often in foul weather at short notice. A couple more things from me. We've got tree planting starting from next week. We're going to run for 5 weeks. We're trying to have a big push on volunteers. So if yourselves or any residents in your ward would like to take part in that, it's a great activity. Get a bit of fresh air, we'll do something for climate and nature. We're planting near the Wakefield side this year at Snakethorpe and Gawthorpe. You can sign up on the Council's Woodland Creation website. If you want a bit more information, I'd like to search for the members. There is information on page 20 in my report. I just want to also talk about the Parks Improvement Programme. Hopefully most of you will see we delivered a first-class fantastic new play area at Fawns Park. That is just the start. Work's already begun at Pontefract. The long list of parks and play areas that are going to be improved this spring. So the Parks Improvement Programme is really starting to see benefit for our residents. And obviously if you want to discuss improvements to a park near you, please do get in touch. And with that I will be one of the
Thank you, Councillor Hemingway. Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to say a massive thank you to Jack and all his team. We have got a new play area down at Thorns Park, and I've got to say I've never seen a play area so busy in the winter before, and everyone's saying it. It's just absolutely bursting with people, and they absolutely love it, so thank you for that. And it's really exciting to see the lake area, the duck pond, getting done up as well. That's been a massive concern, not just for residents in my ward, but also for residents right across the city and beyond. We regularly visit Thorns Park, love the duck pond, take the children there, and it's stunk for ages, it looks a mess, and you can start to see now it all coming together with new fencing, new benches. The lake's getting desalted this week. We just couldn't be happier, and so a massive thank you. So happy that this is getting spread out right across the district as well. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Gert.
Yeah, I think it's great that we're having parks and play areas opened across the district. And it's great to give open spaces for young people and families to go play. But I'd just like to point out that in our ward, we've got hours. Ours keep getting took away and never replaced. We've got one play area, really, which is in Ferrybridge, to cover the whole of the town. We have some play.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's the Council we're here to look at that situation and our improvements we can make to the road.
Councillor Jones.
Can I just thank Councillor Hemingway for coming up to Hemsworth and seeing how much needed the Hemsworth Cemetery extension was. I express thanks on behalf of the Valley Road at heart as well, so thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. It's nice to know about what happened in Thorns Park, and it's a lot of work for both councils there. But in the Shropshire Park, in bypass, the Shropshire Park, we have the bus 108 withdrawn since last year, and many residents wanting to use open space, many families want to enjoy that park, and we also want to invite tourists to come to our park. But unfortunately the bus service is not there. So I just wonder whether the council will really prioritise this area. This is a gem of our district, and to make sure that families and visitors can visit it with a good access.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I'm not Councillor Muller, but I'm very concerned about the situation with the bus network. They're withdrawing services either, and they're also putting the frequency, including not just in the bottom rural buses like that, but also commuter buses that people use to get to work. So it's not a good situation. The funding, from what I understand, is unlikely to improve anytime soon, but very happy to campaign for improvements to local bus services in the month.
Councillor Fishwick.
Thank you for your report, Jack. I just wanted to touch on Spring Mill up at also just off Queen's Drive there. Can we look at get some vast improvements into that area? Currently, residents have been in touch with me, got quite considerable amount of discharge of water in the area, and it's starting to look a little bit for the bit of fighting going on there. So can we just have attention to that area, please? Thank you very much for your help.
Yeah, I think we'll look into that and see what we can do on that side.
Thank you.
Councillor
Yeah, thank you. Close thank you, please. We're just about completed now, first of the pack. And as has been said about Horseback, I've never ever seen our player being used. The zip player, absolutely fabulous, brilliant. But we like to think we've been counted in partnership with the town council as well. Recently regenerated a fountain that has been flogged for decades. And it's so beautiful to see it, and we've just recently completed a path all the way around. It's not a massive path, it's probably just in the district, but we've just completed the footpath all the way around. So now the park is now accessible for wheelchairs, for pushchairs. It's great to see kids on scooters and what have you, coming through trees and what have you. So, on behalf of the Listening Town Council and the three colleagues, I'd like to thank you for what we've achieved. Could do a bit more footpath work with it, Jack, so a little word about that a bit later, but no, thank you. In fact, and it isn't laughable, but last summer, so again, the people eating sandwiches and sausage rolls and what have you, and they were actually having the wait, they'd just been to the crematorium and looked at our park, so how nice it was, and rather than looking at halls somewhere, they came into the park, set the tables up and everything, and they said it was great, so lovely. I tried to get some ambition for help, and so, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Sanders.
Councillor, anyway, could I ask you to put on your list the play area at Middlestown? It's directly adjacent to the Middlestown School. It's a well-used play area. I'm getting complaints. It's basically the ground covering that's really well worn out. It's very, very sludgy, and it's a bit dangerous, especially when you get into swings and things like that for toddlers.
Thank you. So yeah, I think we'll look at that. Just to clarify, in terms of we do have a matrix for improvements, so we do try and prioritise where we've identified the need being greatest with quality and other metrics, access to green space, but very happy to discuss all these schemes that have been suggested with officers and see where we can make improvements.
Councillor Haynes.
Thanks for your report, Jack. Just one little tiny thing. In your climate change section, you say, including synchronising with the combined authority strategy, your target date is 2030 and the combined authority's target date is 2038. Do you think that if you were to extend your target period, that it would be less of a burden on the council's budget over the coming years?
So our district target is still 2038, which is in line with the combined authority. The corporate target as an organisation is 2030. I believe it's important for the council to show leadership on that, and I think it is realistic and achievable if we can decarbonise that, particularly our energy with schemes like solar farms, mine water heating. It's very achievable, and I think it's important we lead the way on that and show the large organisations around the district that it is as possible to get to net zero quickly. So I think we've got the right balance and targets at the moment, and I think with the district one it is right that we align with the combined authority, but there's no change on the 2030 target from the council itself.
Thank you. Councillor Wakefield.
Just an observation. I'm surprised that some councillors in this chamber don't realise that they can send emails to council members, or they can use members' inquiries and not raise a specific case working here. I think we've got more important things to discuss rather than parts being raised by individual councils to bring to council's attention. Just an observation.
Thank you for your observation, Councillor Wakefield. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Miller. Right, next portfolio holder is for children and young people. Councillor Isherwood, would you please introduce your report to council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd draw attention to the Social Worker of the Year award, where again we've had further success, and I want to congratulate the team involved in that, and especially Caroline Smith, who won the Practice Educator of the Year award. So we've still got from strength to strength in the children's department. I, along with my colleague, Councillor Scott, visited the Clarence and Briar Children's Homes. These are the two-bedded homes that we now have, and we find a far better model for supporting our young people, and it was really good to visit them and see how effective they are. And also I need to mention the Wakefield Imagination Library, which is brilliant. It actually works with young families and their young children from the ages 0 to 4. It provides each child with a book every month to encourage parents and children to talk together, to read the books together. And I really would like to point out that we are looking to expand this, and we are looking at funding, and we have set up a link which I'll pass out to all members, where you can donate £2 a month, and that will provide for a child out there. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I move my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments, questions on brief on the report? Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should be all very, very proud of the social worker achievement that you've done from the place that you started off at. We all got to look at the evening news in other areas of the country to see what a difficult job social work is, and to see how easy it is to make mistakes, etc., etc. They have to be commended, and the job that they do is absolutely good.
Thank you. Councillor Spade.
I was fortunate enough to attend the Wakefield Music Services Winter Concert this year, which was absolutely brilliant. I would like to pass thanks to them, to William Library, for the amazing service that the Wakefield Music Education Hub does throughout the year with young people in our district. It's just a terrific service, bringing music into their lives, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. I just want to understand that if the National Education Union decide to go on the strikes, will that strike affect any of those local authority in school fees?
I have asked the Director of Education to keep me informed on that. So we will be notified of any schools that are going to be affected, and I'm happy to let members know in future as it comes forward.
Okay. Right, thank you very much, Councillor Ishwood. Moving on to portfolio holder for community, poverty and health, Councillor Cummings. Would you please introduce your report to Council?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy New Year, everybody, and my congratulations to Vicky. I know she's fed up with people saying congratulations because it's quite embarrassing, but well deserved, thank you. In moving the report, just a couple of things to point out. The Ask for Angela campaign ran over the Christmas period in conjunction with the two safe spaces that we now have in Wakefield and Pontefract. Early signs are that we had 42 visitors to the Wakefield safe space for a variety of reasons, including domestic abuse and sexual violence, and 9 that attended the Pontefract safe space. But I am hoping to have more of a report at the next meeting so we can highlight just how good, useful these pods are at keeping us all safe, not just women, but us all safe in the nighttime economy. And I want to pay tribute and thanks to all those organisations across the whole of the district and in every ward for the Safe Space Initiative. We now have over 30 safe spaces across our district, offering warm, hot food, drinks, conversation, and combating social isolation. So, and absolutely wonderful for that. And if we can turn to agenda page 37, yet another safe space, but this is a safe space for those suffering or in a mental health crisis. And it is located, the details are in the report, and I believe we are getting lots of people coming to that safe space as well. The final thing I just want to mention, and it's around the Resident First group or Resident Recovery group, as we knew it through the pandemic. We did agree at the board on, or the group, we're not a board, but the group on Monday that we would extend our services to the Ossett and Horbury areas. We will be opening citizens' advice that is free for anybody to come in and use, certainly at the Cluntigate Centre and certainly at the, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's the one down Station Road on the left. They will start early February, and you know, the more advertising that you get out there that that's happening, it is actually free for all. And most of you may have seen the delegated decision notice yesterday about the extension of help at the hubs, and that is the opening of or the embracing of the Red Roof Centre in Kingsley. We do need to help, and we all know this. Let's not blame each other. We all know that there's a crisis out there, and we need as much help and support out there for vulnerable residents that I represent, you represent, and the more that we can do around this, the more that we can help those people. Happy to take any questions. I'll close there.
Thank you, Councillor Cummins. Councillor Spence.
Yeah, I've just been looking at the section on the community diagnostic centre. I wonder if you've any idea where it's going to be placed, and can we please make sure when it is placed it's accessible for people, bearing in mind transport.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not sure I can tell you just yet, but it is accessible and it has plenty of car parking. But as soon as I'm able to tell you, I will.
Councillor Gert.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for your report. There's a lot in this that I was very pleased to see, especially with the mental well-being. I think you should be proud of yourselves for a lot of what you've done in here. I was also very pleased to see community ambassadors getting mentioned. It's a group of people who've helped me quite a lot since I got elected. I see them out and about in the communities regularly, and they do a fantastic job. So I read that, and I was really pleased to see that they're getting the praise that they deserve. And then later on I got a phone call, and I was absolutely gobsmacked and dismayed to learn that we're pulling the funding for these people, and they're all going to lose their jobs. What's going on? We've got a group of people here working out in the communities across the district, and then we're just going to get rid of them. I don't get it.
Well, just to correct you on the two things there, the community ambassadors are COVID champions, as they were when we entered COVID, funded from government funding. They're not funded through this council, and the contract comes to an end at the end of March. Whilst I completely agree with what you say, they're out in communities doing excellent jobs, and they have done over the last 3 or so years, but that was funding that came from the government that's come to an end. Now, the leader has talked about budgets and where we're going to have to make cuts. They're not savings, they're cuts to services that we deliver to vulnerable people, to children across our district. They have been wonderful, and I'm sorry that I'm sorry they're going, because I've worked with them as well. But let's be clear, it wasn't this council that funded them. It was through government money, and they were COVID marshals to begin with. We extended it for a year to community ambassadors to help through some crises that we had around vaccination programme and so on and so forth. And that was funded through COVID money. But this council didn't fund them, don't fund the ambassadors. It was money from the government that's come to an end.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Right, thank you. Councillor Cummings. Next report is portfolio holder for culture, leisure and sport. Councillor Graham, please introduce your report to council.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. First off, I just want to mention it's really good news that the government are extending the energy support scheme across the country for businesses. And they've also opened this up to libraries and to museums as well. So it's great to see that they're actually considering local government in providing the support, because we all know energy bills are absolutely sky high. People are struggling. The support that they're offering isn't quite as generous as it was previously, but you know, it's something for us to grab hold of. What I was really disappointed to see was that there was no support there for our leisure centres and for our swimming pools. Right across the country, we are seeing swimming pool after swimming pool being closed down because the buildings are inefficient, because the councils can't afford to run them. And I think this is just a massive oversight by the government to not give any support whatsoever to our pools. I have mentioned in the press release the cost of these to run. They are heavily subsidised, and 1.9 million we're looking at in the next year, which is 4 times what we were 3 years ago. So absolutely massive increases. I've written to ministers, Michael Gove, Jeremy Hunt and whoever else I think will listen, to ask them to reconsider and put this support in place. But I hope to see councils across the country doing the same thing in their portfolios. On a nicer note, I just want to mention that we have got our Rhubarb Festival coming up next month. And as usual, I'll call on everyone in this room to promote this as much as possible. We get it into every nook and cranny across the country because visitors do come literally from as far as America to visit this festival. It's extremely popular, celebrate this glorious vegetable. We have got our Rhubarb Food and Drink Trail back again, which included all of the businesses in the city. Everyone was putting on dishes, really interesting things like rhubarb sausage rolls that you can come along and have a try of. And we're building and making it bigger and bigger each year. We've got comedy nights going on now, so some comedians coming over for 2 nights. Tickets will be on sale. We're just trying to give everyone as much to be happy about as possible in these miserable months until the sun comes back. So please help me promote that, get the word out. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions on the portfolio.
Thank you. Councillor Keith.
Yeah, it's just in, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just in support of what Councillor Graham was saying there about swimming pools. We only have to go back to one times when we were in this room talking about water safety, because that's, and I appreciate the more swimmers drown and non-swimmers drown, non-swimmers don't near the water. But the point is that we've got to look at this in the whole. We haven't got to talk about water safety and then not give any thought to training children how to difficulties or to learn to swim. So I support your situation with the swimming pool.
Can I just say that, Mr. Mayor, it's such an important point, Charlie. I've said it in this chamber many times. We have had deaths across this district, and whilst learning how to swim doesn't necessarily save you from a situation, it can only help. It's a life-saving skill, and we need our pools to do that. So absolutely paramount that we get that support and keep our pools open in this district. Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to pass on a big thank you to Michael and the Libraries team, in particular, me, Matthew, and member of the meeting in our ward, and residents who were really complimentary about the warm space in Stanley Library. Said it was really welcoming, and the staff were really helpful, just some like answer.
be a real true proper community in our towns and villages. Over line now is available Monday to Saturday, along with at least one other small space across the town every single day, Monday to Saturday. So I thank the library staff for what they've done, but also Maureen's team and communities for bringing together the long spaces. I think they've become a real thing, and we should be proud of them. And I'm very happy to support, along with Councillor Nichols, all of them, and also the towers.
Okay. Any further? Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the sentiments about the swimming pools as well, and I totally agree. It needs a complete rethink from the government to fund council swimming pools. They're never ever going to be profitable. If it was to set them at a price that's going to make them profitable, nobody would be able to afford to go. So it does need a change in policy from central government to fund it all across the country, not just in Wakefield. It's important that our children learn to swim. I managed to teach both my daughters how to swim. I've got 4 grandchildren, none of them can swim because I've nowhere to go teach them to. Now, with the mess that this country is in at the moment, that has been caused by the current government, it just seems to get worse and worse and worse, and every time I turn the news on, I think, what's the next thing we're going to mess up? I think likelihood is that we're going to see a Labour government at the next election. I cannot see, even though I'm a little Democrat, I can't see any other outcome other than the next Prime Minister being Keir Starmer. So my question to you is, are we likely to see a change in policy when Labour takes it at the next election, and will we see funding from the Labour Party to bring back the swimming pools that we need?
Thanks, Councillor Gates. Obviously, I can't speak on behalf of Keir Starmer, but I would certainly hope so. If you look back at the last Labour government and the public services, you've got motions today on the NHS, on education. We're talking about swimming pools right now. Can anyone in this chamber name me one section of this country, one department that's actually improved in the last 13 years? Every single public service in this country has gotten worse. And it's going to be a Labour government that invests into this district, into this country, and improves it, and gets things back to where we were. Because I tell you, look at the graphs for anything, whether it be NHS waiting times, or whether it be school outcomes, they were going like that, and they're going back down now. Really simple. I'm sure Councillor Holman is chomping at the bit to prove me wrong. Let's hope it is a Labour government in a year's time, and let's hope we get that investment that we need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank Michael about the exhibition in Pontefract Museum, actually promoting women in rugby league. It's nice to see that, and especially in Featherstone, because we have got a lot of ladies that play rugby league, and to dedicate it to former players as well. My work colleague, Councillor Vickers, his niece were actually involved in that. So I don't think it's brilliant that, you know, let's show the district, the country, that women are brilliant in rugby league, not only football. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holman.
I wasn't going to say anything of the sort, as you know. I was merely going to point out that when Labour come to government, they'll have the same bunch of useless civil servants sat in Whitehall. I know loads of them, and most of them couldn't get a job anywhere else on the field.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on regard to women rugby league, I spoke to you previously this. I spoke to the club at Ostrich Rugby League Club, and apparently the women's section, as a result of the Women's Rugby League World Cup sort of taken off, but the facilities, they need better facilities for So they have got a certain amount of money they've raised, so I'd like you to, if possible, to match fund that amount to get the facilities at Ossett Rugby League clubs up to a standard where women can play rugby league there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Farmer. Councillor Tenping, I think that exhibition is fantastic, and it's great to see so many women from our district celebrated in that exhibition. I definitely think you should go along and see it if you have time. But I think you raise a really good point, Nick, on as it becomes obvious that women do have a chance to play these sports, and I think the popularity will grow with the success of the football team and the rugby team, we do need to start looking at our changing facilities and access, because there's a lot of clubs out there, I think, where it is probably men only changing rooms or the women's in a terrible state. So we do need to be on the ball, forward planning and looking at what we're putting into those. So I've listened to your request to Ossett, and we'll definitely look into it. Thank you.
Councillor Davidson.
I'd like to echo Councillor Tennant's sentiments about the women in rugby league and encourage everyone to visit the exhibition at the museum in Pontefract, because my daughter is part of it, and she was one of the original members that brought the Ashes match from Australia and New Zealand on the original tour. We're now proud owners of the cap that they were presented at that thing. The real point of me making this contribution is to say that I am in communication with the Wakefield Tracy Bayer in terms of how we might, on a wider scale, try to support and help all women in sport, including women.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Just to follow up Councillor Graham's attack on this government. So, could you please tell us which government actually have experienced a pandemic of 100 years, and which government has actually to deal with the war in Europe, almost, devastating all the cost of living issue? And would you please tell us that when you think that this council exactly is a proud moment of what you have done here? So I'm sure that we will have plenty of time next council meeting to talk about the cost of labour council for the last 40 years. So please, when you criticize the government, you need to think about how much real spending we have put in the NHS. 62% off is £65 billion, and you cannot deny that figure. We have more peace officers. I'm not saying everything is great, even you lose it, but for you to attack the government is too easy to say. But let's think about the budget of this council, this Labour council. We cannot afford to have a Labour council any longer. Thank you.
Every government in power faces challenges, and every government previous to that one has similar things, whether that be a war, whether that be a pandemic. These are challenges that you overcome. Even without those things happening, this country has been in decline way before that. I think this is one of the worst governments we have ever seen. To have a Prime Minister in office for, what was it, around 39, 40 days. Locally, you've got your own councillors moving off and forming independent groups. It really is laughable. You can't defend it. I'm proud of what this group and what our officers of this council have done in the face of adversity and in the face of massive cuts over the last 13 years. And I will always bang the drum for that. Yeah, I'll leave it there. We'll easily move on.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm glad you're leaving it there, because obviously we are slightly moving off the point of these particular exercises, but I think, yes, you did start it, Councillor Graham, didn't you?
I did.
Yes, so obviously that's just right. Right, I'm assuming now that that's the end of that. Thank you. Right, next is the portfolio of Flying Highways. Councillor Morley, would you please introduce your report, Councillor?
I'll fetch things back down to earth again, Mr. Mayor, don't we worry on that. Today there's been a drop-in session for members, all members invited to go along and to meet with the Weaver, discuss issues going on in their wards, with buses and one thing or another, so I know a number of members set to put that off to go meet with them. We do now have a new highways manager in place, Martin Barnes, meetings will be set up with all wards to meet myself and Mark to discuss issues in your wards as well, so they'll be taking place over the next month Just one last thing I want to mention there, Mr Mayor, was yesterday in Cabinet we adopted the Zero Vision document to reduce fatalities to zero by 2050 on all West Yorkshire roads. That's a massive change in the way we look at road safety, especially in the Wakefield district. I know all of you have had meetings with yourself and council officers regarding roads, streets, areas where you've got recent concerns. It always never sits well with me when you take into consideration the amount of fatalities, serious accidents and as such, when putting these schemes in place, I suppose the guidance you have to go to. That band is completely dropped now, or being very much dropped now. Speed is a massive factor now in that process. So when we discussed it with highways, we see a lot of changes to some of the schemes. Some schemes we've been paying more to for a number of years. We'll be able to move them forward now. So that's a brilliant document. And I think we should work together, all of us with the police, to reduce fatalities on all our district roads, as they are all preventable. So that was the Mayor. I move my report. Right, let's take any questions.
Councillor Blackwood.
Councillor Barry, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, can I thank you so much for the subway being removed on the A642 in Norway. The picture that's shown on page 49 was taken on a very good day. The lights were working, which means it happened on the hours. There was no sticky deposits on the floor, and I let me hear my that's what they may have been. Back in 2017, I met with yourself and I met with the now highway Martin Barnes, I think it was, and we discussed this safety improvement. And it is a safety improvement because the children that are having to wade through human waste on a daily basis to get to school because the members of the public were using the subway for something which it wasn't designed for was absolutely appalling. So to have it removed, to have a marvellous new two-committees called Axel Pelican Crossing installed, it's helped with traffic flow. And I know that there's more traffic improvements to come on A642, which we've been involved with from the start. I really thank you for that, and can you bring on more of this, please?
Thank you. Councillor Fishwick.
Just like to echo Darren's points there, Matthew. Thank you very much for the ward. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hayes.
Can I just ask, Matthew, your bus improvement plan, bus service improvement plan, will it include reintroducing some of the services that have been removed in Ward 13, South Pontefract? I mean, especially in rural places like Carn and Darrington, the service has been removed altogether. Does this service improvement plan include reinstating some of those routes?
So we're bound by your government's guidance on the bus improvement plan. The bus improvement plan money cannot be used for reinstating routes. They've got to be new routes. So we're trying to be a bit creative how we do this, to maybe try and incorporate some routes that have been lost, but it's the guidance that your government set us. It has to be about new routes, new areas, and look at the bus improvement grant. It just seems perverse that we're losing routes all over the country, all over the district, rural routes that you represent, are going cross-border routes that we're losing out to. The government has been so, tired of how we can spend this money. It would be better if you use the combined authority of the districts. We know better where we'll spend this money. Don't make it too precise. So, no, a lot of the routes we can't reinstate use this money, unfortunately.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say a big thank you, Matthew, for arranging the meeting with the head of commercial arena today and also with the transport officer as well. So we have a big issue in the rural area for the bus service or no bus service, basically. And I really hope you can follow up some discussion we had in terms of Netherton. So hopefully we will make some improvement before too long. And on the other note is about inquest in Netherton today. And I want to thank officers that involved in this inquest and want you to join me to send our condolences to the family, to Mr. Michael Holmes' wife. And it's a tragic death. Some people just walking the dog in the field and got killed by a cow. And I hope that this council will learn some lesson to see what exactly the public footpath should look like in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, on the second point, Councillor, after the inquest to take place and any recommendations from the coroner that will take into account, that will be acted upon by yourselves. On the first issue of buses, rural areas are one of the worst areas of buses, you know that. Your government needs to give us money. we need a transport system that's fit like London, from West Yorkshire, Yorkshire, all over the country, public ownership, public buses, making sure those profits go back into new services and increasing funding for public transport needs to happen in one fit for purpose public transport systems.
Councillor Swift.
Yeah, Chair Kevin Swift, just to very briefly echo the importance of the comments that Councillor Morley's made. We've got things going in absolutely the opposite direction. We have policies which talk about better frequencies, better buses in the early morning to get to work, and late in the evening for people to get back home safely, for services that cover all of our communities. At the moment, the trends are absolutely in the opposite direction. It's the explicitly stated policy of Arriva in particular to thin out the services in the evenings and in the morning and to compress the middle period of daytime services. We've got policies again being pursued that concentrate services on main roads so that they do not go off onto the estates that are needed by older and disabled people. And amazingly, we have this situation where the explicit government guidance about the bus service improvement money is that it shouldn't be used to offset those kind of trends. And we've got major objectives of climate change that require better use of public transport, of economic development as well as the social needs. And at the moment, we've got the government financing, the government policies explicitly going in the opposite direction to what everybody, as a matter of common sense, would actually accept is where we want to go. Just absolutely echoing what Councillor Morley said.
Thank you. Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment really about the Aubrey pedestrian crossing that's outside the school. I live at Aubrey Bridge, and so I've travelled 2 or 3 times into Wakefield, around about the time when the kids are going into school and sometimes when they're going back. What I find unbelievable is that you put a fantastic pedestrian crossing up there for parents with the young kids are still diving in between parked cars trying to cross the road when that pedestrian crossing is 20 yards away. So is it possible to do something with the school to educate the parents, not necessarily the kids, the parents, that that is a crossing and that's the safest place to cross that main road?
You can educate parents on buildings outside any schools. It's quite true. Wherever you go, I mean, my ward, your ward, parking outside school is a nightmare. It's horrendous. But it's their kids are dropping off, and I don't get it. There's plenty of room. It's about being prepared to take an extra 10 minutes walk, 5 minutes walk, park a little bit further away. So I will speak to the safety group. The school safety group will see do some work with that school, but yeah, it's just an ongoing issue with all our schools.
Councillor Fishwick.
Just touching on Councillor Smith's point there, read about Oxford, just recently looking at that smart city coming, obviously the trial in 2023. Has that got any interjection? Are we looking at that as a council? I know Bradford's got the clean environment safe area at the charge at the moment. But is this any transport issues? Is that anything to do with what Oxford's trying out at the moment? Are we looking for the longevity of going that way? The 15-minute smart cities I'm talking about.
Smart cities can be a lot of things. I mean, we're told now there's the data there and information through a lamppost of the information we're putting there through the new column putting in, new lamps putting up there, that you can find out what speed on every road is going to do, what sort of accidents on the road. It's unbelievable smart cities can do. So we are constantly looking at these sort of issues and how we can improve them to the Wakefield district. I am one, I like other people to try things first, see what the pitfalls are before we don't head on into anything, but we're all doing different schemes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith.
Yes. Sorry, Chair. Thank you. I was looking into a Vision Zero campaign that you're announcing, Matthew. I think it's a fantastic idea. As you know, I serve on the West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Authority. The suppliers with figures over the 3-year period rolling programme, and the figures of accidents have gone up by 15%, road traffic collisions by 15 accidents. This is indicative of the road traffic levels returning to pre-pandemic in some people. But the road traffic collisions that they're focusing on, particularly, are the ones that's involving younger drivers. And they've been doing a lot of work with our colleges to try and get this safety message across to younger drivers, because they're finding that particularly in our district, a lot of those riders, that 15%, that 15 accidents driving is involving young drivers. So if we could build sort of something into that and work with the West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank you, Councillor Morley, for all your help in improving road safety. I don't know whether you actually had any involvement with the improvements at Hilltop. If you did, thank you, because made that junction a lot safer. And you mentioned his names a few times, so I'd just like to mention him as well, Martin Barnes. I think he's a cracking officer, and I think this council needs to do everything they can to make sure he can move on. Because he certainly helped me a lot, and it's refreshing to email somebody and actually get a response. If he does say no, it gives you a reason why he said no, rather than just say no. So I appreciate it, and I think it's nice that you mentioned it. What I want to ask you about is you've got your West Yorkshire Rail strategy at the end of there on about stations and accessibility. At Nottingley Station, with no access over to the opposite platform, it's just a footbridge. I know this has been going on for years and years and years. I know that Cooper did a television bit up there, and she was going to get it all sorted, and nothing ever happened. If I email Network Rail, I just don't get a response at all. The other thing is with the train services there, frequently they cut the service short, stop the trains at Monkhill, put them in late on a morning, started yesterday morning, they started at Castleford first trains instead of at Nottingham. It's the only connection that a lot of our residents have got who work in Leeds. The only way they've got to get in there, there's no direct bus service. And I appreciate, that as council we don't have any influence over the scheduling. But is there anything that you can do to help people of Nottingham get the train station more accessible to parents with buggies and disabled people? And also to stop Northern Rail cutting the train short. People getting home from work at Leeds, and suddenly the train's going to stop at Monkhill and it's right, get off and walk. It's not. And you're not my views anyway. I hope if there is another Labour government, that to reverse it and renationalise public transport.
Councillor, do you want to take my hand and come and join us? You should be with us. I'm sensing that maybe, we'd love to have you. You'd ask them to our group. On the second point, we were successful a couple of years ago with Access for All investment from the government for Castleford and also for Monkhill Station, Pontefract. There was issues with not regarding land around the station as well. The combined policy we want to improve on the station was parking provision there and also the footbridge. So we're still, and the conversation is still going on. We're still trying to find some ways to resolve land issue and also look at funding for the footbridge because it is much needed. And on your points regarding obviously train services, it's just the ongoing nightmare of public transport. We have to suffer in West Yorkshire. The cuts and the cancellations is everywhere. That's why we need it all back in ownership, like you say, like true. But on Martin Barnes, well, we're promoting something, can't do much more than trying to retain him. He is a good officer. He doesn't owe a promise. But it's just one of the issues we've got in the country. Highways engineers sort out to breathe at the moment. More a bit of a merry-go-round, jumping from one council to the next, and off into the private sector. So we all have issues. A number of posts within highways, across all highways authorities, but do appreciate them sticking with us.
Well, thank you. There's 1 minute left on this section, Councillor Isherwood.
I was just wondering, Kerry just raised something about where is there a policy, I just couldn't quite get it, but is there a policy or something about taking buses away from the estates, which has happened to us, taking it away from the private road estate, the old rural people, the elderly people, and make it go straight down the A645, where there's no bus stops and no houses. Well, I don't know how to do this, but it don't even make economic sense to take the buses away from famous passengers. It just doesn't make any sense. Would you go in favour or whoever does it? Would you go back to your sample meetings? Because when I sent them an email, it came back and said, well, it's improving the service from Nottingham to Wakefield. Well, might well be looking at 10 minutes quicker, 5 minutes quicker. It's certainly not doing anything for the vulnerable people on private roads. And I just wondered if you could get an answer, but I don't think that's an acceptable answer.
Thank you. We'll come back very quickly, please, because we're not.
Just on that one, very quickly, when we met with the Reeve in the past, Graham, it tells how we're improving services between Ponty and Cass, Featherstone and all that. It's between stations. It's not like saying between where people live. That's why they're doing away with service more and more again. I remember Lincoln Council was raising Park Road and Castleford, they were taking service completely off of there. But they improved the service of bus stations. Ridiculous. We do raise it though.
Thank you. Whilst detecting a slight movement over to national politics, myself pleased that we are local council stuff. Thank you very much. Right, the final cabinet report is that of the portfolio holder for resources. Councillor Collins, can you please introduce your report to the council? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in moving the report, I'll just highlight a couple of things. So I would like to offer big thanks and appreciation to our payroll team who made sure that once the pay award was agreed on the 1st of November, that went straight to payroll, which ensured all our workers got their increase in line with November's pay, and it didn't sort of kick on down the road until after Christmas. They do phenomenal work. They did the same in April to make sure that our workers were able to take advantage with their back pay of their national insurance cuts. So I think they do an incredible job at delivering that. And finally, with my report, I'd just like to highlight the Elections Act and voter ID requirements. People will have seen it kicking around everywhere now. I know we've done a number of briefings and almost half of councillors have now done a briefing and have had all the information on that. We are going to do a couple more briefings because there were some really good questions coming through from that, and we are sending around an FAQ sheet on that. I think it's really important that as members we promote it because it is going to be a very different election this year. Not everyone is going to know the requirements, and what we don't want to see is people further getting sort of barriers put in the way of democracy and being able to vote whoever they want to vote for. So there are a number of criteria, we'll send that round, but I just encourage people to send out some of the comms on social media that are going around from the council and from the election, from the electoral commission, and just really push that this year because it is going to be very different, and the last thing that anyone wants is to see voters turned away from polling stations. So with that, I move it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions or observations, Councillor Cummins?
Yeah, I just want to thank the elections team for the absolutely excellent briefing that they're doing in helping us all try to understand what is required from May onwards, so thank you.
Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My point was the same as Councillor Cummins. I think it was an exceptional briefing with lots of detail and put together in very short notice, which has been helpful in providing us with the last minute guidance. So thank you to the elections team. I'm sure we're all confident they're going to do a great job in the circumstances.
Thank you. Councillor Tolley.
Yeah, just as mentioned to the briefing, and to be quite honest with you, maybe we're having a policy put together for this government, which is anything other than new franchising being promoted this is one without any shadow of a doubt. Because if you're going to insist that somebody has a valid photo, it can't be valid. If a passport is going to be your proof of who you are, it can't be valid. It doesn't matter. It can be 10 years old, so it's not really nothing to do with that validity and about what's right and and it's about defranchising people. It's trying to stop people from voting. And as I asked in the briefing, we've never ever had one issue of election fraud in this county, in this district, and it's about 0.003% nationally. Again, well, I'm talking about why we're wasting money on X, Y, Z, and why can't people pay this and that, the other public services, but yet we'll spend an enormous amount of money implementing a system that it's virtually a complete waste of time. We all know what it's about. Keep that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a presentation with the Chair's corporate strategy on Monday at the Management Board, and we had a presentation about the effects of this new requirement, and concern was expressed in terms of those people that you've identified who do not have photographic evidence, and there is the option of having a certificate that will then allow those who haven't got the photographic to actually get the vote. Now, I was cynical and I'm still cynical in support of the comments that you've made in terms of, is this to the benefit of everybody or is it to the disbenefit of those out there having to A, have no IT knowledge or skills, and B, do not have photographic evidence to go through getting the certificate. London was mentioned, Steve, and our electoral officer and our services assistant over here actually mentioned that what's applicable from government is not even sufficient to get a leaflet out to every house across the district about the information that's needed. So it was suggested, and I think the issue in terms of our comments took up the suggestion, not only to be looking at what's coming out from national government, which is very skimpy, and for a lot of people there about this certificate may not understand it in full, but we try to get something more appropriate and understandable, not jargon, out to people about to be able to vote. What we don't want is what's happened across in the USA, where actually it's a deterrent to people not to bother to go out and have their democratic right. So I'm hoping that that's something that's going to be taken up. I know Gillian and her team were there, they gave an excellent presentation, so hopefully we can get that message out through the press and every publicity arm that we have. Always remembering that we do have people across our district who do not have the Facebook, the Twitter, and the IT, and the rest of it, so we need to get the message out as best we can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bill.
Yes, thank you. Actually, big thanks to the elections team in terms of the briefing that they've done. Very much for those on this side of the chamber who actually managed to get them. I can't recall any opposition members taking advantage of that. I think it would be very helpful if they had to see the true impact of the policies and the hoops that they're going to force some people in our communities to jump through to get there. The only thing I will say in relation to what Councillor Tully said, you missed out on a group of people who are being enfranchised, which includes an extension to overseas voters. Any connection with an area, you can carry on going over 15 years. I find that absolutely ridiculous. Keep your 5-year link to the area where you live is one thing, but the idea that you can keep a permanent vote back in your home is absolutely appalling. We know the franchising and the wider franchising, and it's profoundly anti-democratic.
Thank you, Councillor Pickersgill. Councillor Homewood.
I was going to say, Councillor Pickersgill, I wrote a funeral in London on Monday. I'm sorry but this is, again, a big fuss about nothing. I don't think impersonation is a big problem in polling stations, particularly, maybe in some areas, but not widespread. And as I said, there's no other country in Europe that doesn't show ID on polling stations. I don't see what the big deal is. It's just we've had because we're in Ireland, we've had a long history of never really having a problem with it. Now there's a lot of people in the country who aren't entitled to vote. There's a lot of people here not entitled to vote. And all they're doing really is making sure that they don't.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks colleagues for comments. You know, it's no secret what my position has been on this. I think we fetched a motion sometime, I think last year when we was in the market all on this, because I think there isn't a problem. It is designed, the policy and the act is designed to fix a problem that isn't there, that doesn't really make a difference to it. Nobody's going around, we don't have mass electoral fraud, and if there was that problem I could understand the need for it. But in a time when we should be engaging more people to vote, to get more people to have their say in shaping services and what they need in the communities, the government are just putting restrictions in place to make it harder for those people that already do vote. Let's only comment we have got a high visibility strategy in terms of comms. There will be lots going out everywhere. I appreciate not everybody does have social media, but we will be doing lots around that, and we will be making sure that we get to as many people as we can, and I'd encourage members to do the same.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Gers.
Yeah, just very quickly, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to correct Councillor Pickersgill. I was at the same briefing that you were.
Thank you. Okay, right, draw a line on that one now. Agenda item number 9 is to confirm the allocation of committee seats and revised appointments to committees. Is the report moved? Thank you, Councillor. Is the report seconded? Thank you, Councillor Collins. Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Right, that is carried. Agenda item 10 is to consider a report detailing arrangements in place for the Corporate Director, Adults and Health, and to seek approval for a continuation of that arrangement. Is the report moved?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. In moving the report, just to say that Wakefield Council has a proud record of working in partnership with our local NHS services, and this partnership is even more important today as we see massive pressures on health and social care. Over the last 2 years we've had an arrangement with the NHS that has enabled one of our senior officers to be seconded into the council to lead our Adults and Health Directorate. The senior officer is Joe Webster. The unique role provides an opportunity for a single leader to oversee and coordinate local health and social care services. This has led to better joint planning of local services, more joint working and teams coming together across the district, and more flexible use of resources, including funding, which this council has benefited from. The government has delayed the introduction of the long-awaited reforms to adult social care, and the future national arrangements for integration between local authorities and the NHS is unclear. Therefore, we would like to extend the current secondment arrangements for a further 12 months to give us the time to agree long-term arrangements. So I'm asking the Council to note the benefits of the integration of health and social care, and to agree a further 12-month extension.
Thank you. Is the report seconded? Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Agenda item 11 is to consider a report approving the salary package to the Service Director of Children's Social Care. Is the report moved? Councillor Schultz.
I move the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Is the report seconded? Any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Okay. Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Agenda item 12 is to consider the Director of Public Health's annual report. Is the report moved?
Yeah, I think you will all have received this fantastic report. Once again, it's wonderful what Anna and the team come up with. It's easy to read, it's got lots and lots of case studies in it, and I just want to thank Anna and the team for doing such an excellent job and recognising the problems we do have across the district and the help and support that some of our communities need and will continue to need. I could talk about austerity, I could talk about 32 food banks across the district, all being supported by the public health team. Also lots of the One Spaces initiative, which was recognised and funded through public health and through public health grants. So I think we're here today to congratulate Anna and her team on the production of this, but also to endorse the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the report seconded? Councillor Ferguson, thank you. Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 13 is to consider the revised statement of gambling principles. Is the report moved? Thank you. Is the report seconded? Thank you. Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Right, that is carried. Right, following a motion at Council last year, agenda item 14 details reports by the Chair of Adult Services, Public Health and the NHS and OBU scrutiny on access to NHS dentistry. Is the report moved?
Move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Is the report seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Right, that is carried. The last report on the agenda is item 15, which is to consider the local government boundary review of Wakefield Council. Is report moved? Thank you, Councillor Collins. Is report seconded? Thank you, Councillor Nichols. Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Right, given that no questions to members have been made, agenda item 17 is the final item for consideration and is to deal with any motions. 3 motions have been received. The first motion is from Councillor Hemingway. Would you please move the motion to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The rivers, Calder and Aire have always been amongst the most crucial features of our district. In elder days, they're probably the very reason why settlements developed at Wakefield and Castleford. They would have provided drinking water and sources of food, as well as supported livelihoods and as a means of transport and navigation. They've always been important to us, but even more so to nature. Rivers are a crucial source of biodiversity. They provide unique freshwater habitats and form a key part of the ecosystem for many native species. From insects to fish and birds, they are the blue arteries that allow nature to thrive. From the dragonflies skimming under the surface to the trout lurking below, healthy rivers mean healthy ecosystems. But in the UK and here in Wakefield, our rivers are far from healthy. More than 3/4 fail to meet the required health standards, and recent research has shown they're little more than a toxic soup. Sadly, due to pollution, they're full of harmful levels of phosphates and can contain deadly bacteria such as E. coli. They are amongst the most polluted rivers in all of Europe, and only 2 rivers in the whole of England have waters that are fit to bathe in. This has not happened by accident. Government and many private companies have treated our rivers as little more than open sewers. Chances have been missed to ban sewage discharge, to invest in wastewater infrastructure, to address the problem. Sadly, the government have compounded this already bad situation with the negligence of further inaction. with DEFRA recently publishing revised water quality targets. Targets which set back goals to improve water quality not by 1 or 2 years, but by decades, to 2063. As an already nature-depleted country, can we really afford to wait that long? I've outlined the grim national picture, but what is the situation like in our district here? Well, I recently went down by the banks of the River Calder to have a look at myself, just on a small stretch of the river near where I live, and there was clear evidence of recent sewage discharge into the river. But, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to be more precise than that, and just go and see with my own eyes. So I researched the figures, and I was even more horrified. The latest figures available, compiled by the Rivers Trust, show that just in that small stretch of the river alone, from Horbury Bridge to the M1 motorway bridge by the lagoons, there were a total of 429 sewage discharges, lasting more than 2,400 hours in total, 100 days of sewage entering the river. Now, not all of that is raw sewage, some of it is wastewater, but it is nonetheless a staggering and appalling figure which shows the extent of material entering into our river. Now, I'm under no illusion that over the past century our rivers have been in pristine condition. Indeed, the Calder and Aire have suffered from pollution for many years. We used to have rainbow-coloured waters at times and foam scum coming off weirs. They've not always been perfect, but from the 1950s onwards, they began to improve in terms of quality. Data compiled by the Environment Agency shows that sewer discharge, while not the only pollutant in our rivers at the moment, is actually the main reason holding back stretches of the River Calder from achieving good water quality. This is completely unacceptable in the 21st century, and we can and must do better. Our district has a proud legacy of fighting against pollution and helping nature to recover, be it Charles Water's case against the Walton Soap Factory, or the restoration and naturalisation of dozens of former local sites around the district. We cannot sit back and let our rivers be continually polluted and ruined by this abhorrent practice. So I urge members of all parties to support this motion. This isn't political, this is about solving this really awful problem in our district. Let's send a united message to the government and be clear that it's unacceptable to dump sewage into the river's area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Mitchell. In second motion, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I'll speak now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to admit I wasn't aware of much water pollution until this summer when you saw it on your telly, discharge going into the sea and so on. It was particularly surprising because if you remember this summer there was no rainfall of any sort. Couldn't understand why you need to use storm overflows. But I started doing some research on this about that with this motion, and I discovered that between 2016 and 2021 sewage, raw sewage has been pumped into our waterways for a total of I can't say it is too big, 9.5 billion hours, apparently the equivalent of 1,076 years, which in itself is a 2,553% increase on the previous 5 years. Obviously something has gone very badly wrong. The parliamentary report that was environmental audit, which we produced in January 22, I've got bits of it here. It's very good, it's also very sobering. It's a 139-page report, and I'm not going to read it all out, so relax. A couple of things that came from it. We have 42 wild salmon rivers in this country, and 39 of these rivers, the wild salmon population is at risk. Of course, salmon's under a lot of threat from all sorts of things, but frankly, pollution in the rivers in which it's trying to spawn was one of the most serious risk effects. Now that's a problem. While our river nearer to home was Ilkley, the River Wharf near Ilkley was designated as one of the very few it's a river that designated safe for inland bathing. When they went, the campaigners, when they went off to swim in it after a while, discovered all sorts of interesting things floating around in it were actually called Yorkshire water was responsible. Well, everybody knows to do it, and it's only sometimes. Of course, it isn't only sometimes, and everybody didn't know. So people were jumping into that river because it was safe for inland bathing. You know, it wouldn't necessarily kill, it's not going to kill you, but it could make you quite sick. It could send you variation, it's bad for your eyes. It's not good, it's certainly distinctly unpleasant to be swimming around with sharing your swimming water with all the stuff that goes down people's toilets. It's the next problem. Apart from human waste, Unfortunately, lots of other things go down toilets as well, and the water companies have been saying that they cannot, they struggle with their pipes are struggling, they can't cope with it, to get wet wipes, it become too big, it clogs everything up, etc., etc. Most of it is the whinging, that's the wrong word, but talking to, just even speak to this audit committee, a lot of them are talking about that they did do everything they should be doing, and all that mess, and all of them putting unacceptable pressure on prices, because that wouldn't be right. And then they have Ofwat also telling them that they can't increase their prices because they need to have Ofwat have to act instead of competition, because they're in Industry 2000 in competition. Ofwat wants to give them efficiency challenges. Zero bills still go up, and that I think is part of this, is a lot of the problem, is the structure of water. Nobody else does it this way. In England, 70% of English waterways are owned by foreign investors. Nothing wrong with that in itself. Yorkshire Water, there's a group of private investment groups from Singapore, the US, Germany, Australia. We're all part of the Kettle Group, which is based in Jersey, although it is registered in the UK for tax purposes. I'm not sure about all the others, but it's very hard to find out who owns what. They have, they've basically done a private equity structure to focus on extracting revenue rather than long-term health of the industry. There's nothing actually wrong with that in itself if you're talking about soap or washing machines or something where you actually have a choice. What's always struck me as odd about this government and the previous governments, who are so fond of privatisation, they don't seem to understand how it works. Private sector cannot work efficiently without proper competition. It needs it. It's got to know that each and every one of its customers can go elsewhere. Now, if somebody can find me a substitute for water, I'll go elsewhere. But we can't, and we need it, and it's the most vital substance there is. So yeah, it might be getting slightly international there, but that is one of the major problems with water. It does need to be nationalised and as fast as is humanly possible, which obviously won't be that quick. However, education can happen, there are various things that can be done about what to flush down the toilet. And fair enough. 54 billion in this industry is ratcheted up 54 billion in debt. It has also managed to pay out 65.9 billion in dividends. So it's fairly clear something is going on somewhere. I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Does any member wish to speak on the motion? May I remind members that speeches must be directed to the question, under discussion, or to a personal explanation or point of order. No speech may exceed 5 minutes. Councillor Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is really a basic requirement to supply and get rid of a good water supply and get rid of the waste. Jack is right, they're turning the rivers into open sores, whilst blatantly profiteering and paying shareholders and investors. Infrastructure investment is scant and will continue to do so until we get an effective controlling watchdog, I think. And I have little or no faith in Yorkshire Water giving us a water supply fit for the 2020s or disposing of the waste safely and effectively, so I support the motion.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You say I used to work for Yorkshire Water. When it was privatised, I saw the changes, what happened. Immediately it was privatised. When I was young, I can remember standing by the river and waiting for the bus on the road, and seeing all the fog coming over like clouds in the sky, all white clouds, and seeing them floating over the road. Because at that time, in the 60s and 70s, the river was looked upon as just being a source for liquid waste, getting rid of liquid waste. Luckily, we now appreciate our environment, and we now appreciate our rivers, and I'm glad to see that no longer happens, and that our rivers were getting cleaner. But I'm disappointed now that just a bit further downstream to where I was waiting, we have sewage works, and I am actually angered to read that there were 144 incidences of sewage being discharged into the river at that point. We want our rivers to be clean, we want it to be safe. We are now using the river and the riverside to be an amenity for the community. We want people to live by the rivers, we want people to have recreation on the river. The river has got to be clean to do that. This pollution has to stop. I support this motion.
Councillor Wallace. Councillor Swift.
I mean, just to emphasise the phenomenal scale of the task that's to be faced, some of it can be dealt with relatively quickly, i.e. toughening up the enforcement against industrial discharges from agricultural land and so forth, down to bad practice. But the core of this problem is years and years of underinvestment by the water companies, and they've come up against the climate change problems, where volatile weather means that the incidence of very heavy rainfall is much more than it used to be. As with hospitals, as with other things, something which is already under capacity, already under quality, it is totally unfitted to demonstrate the degree of resilience required to cope with the kind of weather systems we're coming up against. Like Tony, my own professional career touched to some degree on these matters, and certainly when I was training, we expected that what were called combined sewers would soon be a thing of the past, that it was a Victorian inheritance, that everything new would be done as what they call separate sewers. The reality has been that 2 decades into the 21st century, we've still got one hell of a lot of these so-called combined sewers. Because if the foul waste is going down the same pipe as the rainwater, then what happens when you get heavy rain is that you outpace the capacity of the system, you outpace the capacity of the actual sewage treatment works. And we are getting more and more heavy rain, and at the same time, an awful lot of it is still, quite wrongly, but is still going into these so-called combined systems. So that an overflow isn't just the excess rainfall, the overflow contains all the sewage as well. And the cost of putting these things right, which has to be faced up to, it's going to be on an enormous scale. We've got years and years of underinvestment to control. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bowwood.
I support the motion because, again, everybody's touched on it, underinvestment, whether it be water companies that are really monopolies, or whether it's gas companies that don't have enough storage facilities to store gas in advance. The government let them get away with it. Now they're going to sell them let them use the rivers and sell us the rivers effectively. But it's charging us to get rid of our waste by dumping it in our rivers. It's great, you know. So, no, I don't think so.
Councillor Tully.
I would advise anybody today not to go later and rewind and debate I did coming to this place on the radio this morning between the Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trust about the third reading today, which is happening in Parliament, about the burning of European regulations, and over 1,000 of these were connected with wildlife and water discharge and one another, and nothing to replace them. What's even more sad is that the guy said in his interview that I spoke to was Chief Executive, number 10 down the street yesterday. I spoke to numerous Conservative MPs, one female MP said to me, well, don't worry about it, this will be in the King's Speech going forward. It's just not in the King's Speech, it's third reading tomorrow. That's how much this particular Member of Parliament has got an interest in this survey. Got around quite, I think 70% of Conservative MPs in Parliament today have got no interest, no idea about what's happening with this particular bill that's at third reading today, and all we're doing is following the Jacob Rees-Mogg mantra about this stuff. I'm going to try and say the pros and cons, whether it should be in and out of Europe, it's done and dusted, that is what it's and it will leave us with no regulation going forward, and no regulations, and people move away from rivers and to asbestos and other things and contaminated things. So I'm going to support this resolution. I'm glad that the whole council will support this resolution. What we'll get right into Tree's copy of the department is now doing there, but that's what we must do, and that's what we're pursuing to do now. We'll certainly support the resolution.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments? Councillor Haynes.
Just briefly, I'd just like to support this motion because I've worked within that industry and there's the danger of wheels disease and all sorts of things. These discharges usually happen with excessive rainfall and the existing plants being unable to cope with it, but the Water Board has a responsibility to rectify that situation.
Thank you. Right, I'm not seeing any more hands. So, Councillor Hemingway has moved the motion. You have the right to reply. In exercising your right to reply, may I remind you that you know no new matter can be introduced.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank members from right around the chamber for the support this month. It's great that we're able to do this on a cross-party basis. We don't have to accept the current situation. If you look to other countries like Slovenia, they have exceptional water quality in their rivers, which people and nature can enjoy and thrive in. So I hope we can see that situation in Wakefield in the UK not too distant future. So thank you everyone for your contributions and support.
Thank you. Right, so please show all those in favour of the motion. Anyone against? Any abstentions? This is carried. Thank you. Right, the second motion is from Councillor Isherwood. Would you please move your motion to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm bringing this motion to Council because education is facing a crisis, especially here in Wakefield. The national funding formula is not fair and it is not working. And as a result, many schools in the district are facing serious financial hardship due to underfunding. This is further exacerbated by the rapidly developing cost of living crisis and the massive increases in fuel costs. We all know that here in Wakefield, we have some of the most deprived areas in the country, where our children and young people need all the support and help that they can get. Yet on a graph that was recently published by the F40 group showing the minimum per pupil funding level payments, we find ourselves towards the bottom of that table, receiving just over £6,500 per pupil per annum, as against the almost £10,000 per pupil that the LAs at the top of the graph receive. Only 22 out of 153 local authorities receive the same or lower amounts. Although the government has recognised that the funding of schools is inequitable, attempts at levelling up are slow, and with the current process, it is anticipated that it could take 15 to 20 years to close up the funding gap. This is because the government do not want to affect the outcomes for those authorities at the top of the table, which I fully understand and agree with. But our children cannot wait for another 15 to 20 years, nor can our schools. They need the funding now. When we talk of 15 to 20 years, we are talking about a whole generation of our children who are going to suffer from the underfunding of our education system. Government needs to act more quickly to eradicate this unfairness, so that our children here in Wakefield have the same life chances as those who live in better funded authorities. Recently, I have attended a number of meetings where the gravity of the situation has been brought up. Replacing staff is becoming a problem, particularly the support staff that schools rely on, TAs, lunchtime staff, and special educational needs support staff. Over the past few years, teachers have experienced a real-time pay reduction of 20% and school support staff 25%. Jobs that used to be easy to fill are now being left vacant because there is no one to fill them. The jobs just don't pay as well as so many other jobs. And amongst the school staff, this is going to inevitably lead to stress. There are schools out there in our district that have had very healthy budgets in the past, but are now looking at a possible deficit budget over the next 2 years. And this is just not local authority schools, it is also academies. As a council, we have a responsibility to do everything in our power to ensure all our schools get the funding they need to give all our children the education they deserve. At a recent Prime Minister's questions in Parliament, there was a rather heated debate between the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister about private educational establishments. private schools annually, establishments that can then go on to charge an average of £14,940 per annum per pupil. But during the exchange, Rishi Sunak talked about aspiration and opportunity. Well, I'm here to talk about giving our children and our young people in our district the same opportunity of an excellent education, the same opportunity to aspire to be the best that they can be. All our children, school on across the district, deserve the aspirations and opportunities that a good education can give. That is why I am asking members to support the motion and resolve that this local authority demands that government address this issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is the motion seconded? Councillor Scott, seconding the motion, do you wish to formally speak now, or is there the right to speak until later in the debate? Thank you. Right, does any member wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Gert.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to support this motion. I think it's very important, the education of our children. They are the future of the country, and hopefully they'll do a better job than we've done. But I do need to say this, it's a bit hard dumping all the responsibility on the government, and I hate to stick up for this government, it's rubbish. But us as an authority, we're not doing anything that we can do neither. And I think the Cabinet needs to consider this. I deal with a few constituents with special education needs, children, and we're making it right difficult for them to even access the funding that is available. So as a council, we can do better. And I think, you know, you need to look at that as well, look at your responsibilities with what we've already got. Quite happy to support this motion. But we need more schools and all. We can't keep building housing estates all over the place. I'm not planning to keep saying this. And not building the schools. So we need to look at ourselves first as well as going to government and saying we need more grass. We can do better ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Keith. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Investment in education is investment in the future, realistically. It should be constantly updated and reviewed where the money is best spent, modernised and using the latest methods. But it must also be equal, fairly distributed and accessible by all. 15 to 20 years will see a blighted generation, which we will have to rely on to generate the nation's prosperity in the future. So I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Thanks, Mayor. I've obviously got experience of working in schools, and I've been in a situation where you have to buy pens and pencils and paper because the department that you're working in is run out. We haven't got enough money. I've also recently been working in schools in this district, in the last few months, where the turning out lights, we've got dark corridors to translate on the energy bills. It's sort of a really bad situation for a lot of schools, but needs must be the government to plan it. I think Margaret's motion really, it's great because it highlights the real problem, and that's that schools are very unequal in terms of the funding they get. I have worked in schools where they've got everything they need and to provide for the pupils, and they're looking at doing things to the building. Fantastic, but there's also schools that don't have, a pot to the program. One of the issues I'm glad Councillor Gibb raised was that of SEN children. I feel like SEN children, it is sort of an epidemic in itself. People are really starting to uncover it, and we're more aware now of additional needs within pupils. And we have so many students right across this district and across the country, I think more than ever, that need that additional help. And the government need to meet that need by providing the funding. I'm not holding my breath. I mean, the Prime Minister's being caught on camera boasting about keeping money in affluent areas and withholding it from those that are deprived. So I don't think education is one of his priorities, but big thank you to Margaret for highlighting this. I think it is the most important thing to help tackle inequality and to help give everyone a fair chance in life. So thank you for bringing it, and I'll wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. I support this motion because I think in an area of deprivation, we're expecting the scope of the kind of things that schools are taking responsibility, that scope of their responsibility is becoming wider and wider, taking responsibility for clothing children, feeding children, staff are using their own money and support staff as well, to provide breakfast for kids, to give clothes to kids, even to have washing machines in school to wash clothes for kids because people can't afford to pay for their electricity at home. So in the kind of situation where we have the cost of living crisis on top of the areas of deprivation to start off with, schools are having to provide for much more than the general education curriculum, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration, so I fully support this motion. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Anybody further wish to speak? Councillor Scott, you reserve the right to speak till late. David, do you want to speak now?
Yes, please, thank you. I know some research using the government websites, the BBC website and the Guardian website, and what I found was the Institute for Fiscal Studies calculated that total spending on education was approximately 2% lower in 2021 than it was in 2010. While the share of total spending on education has been falling, the proportion of the UK population in full-time education has risen from 18% to an all-time high of 20% during the 2000s, where it remains today. 9 out of 10 schools will have run out of money by this time next year. Head teachers and academy leaders are warning that further spending cuts will push many schools and academy trusts over the cliff and result in most schools having to lose essential teaching and support staff. Paul Whiteman, General Secretary of the NAHT, that's the National Association of Head Teachers, said schools are cut to the bone. This will mean cutting teaching hours, teachers and teachers. There's been 15 years with no overall growth in school spending. This squeeze on school resources is effectively without precedent in post-war UK history. There has been 15 years with no overall growth at all. Schools are now facing new and significant cost pressures, e.g. surging energy prices, national insurance increase and pressures due to SEND being underfunded. Funding for pupils with SEND is in crisis, with overall high needs budget deficits estimated to be more than 2 billion and growing. In fact, it could be said that it's beyond the crisis in England and money from budgets from all children are in policies. Changes to the government's national funding formula have seen a redistribution of funding away from schools serving the most deprived communities in recent years. Nearly all schools, 97%, responded to a survey by a head teachers union said they received insufficient funding to support pupils with SEN. The National Association of Head Teachers report, also based on 1,500 teachers, head teachers, suggests nearly a third of schools have cut services in the past year. The starkest findings relate to funding for education for pupils who have SEN. Special needs is beyond crisis. It's sucking money from their budgets, and that's from a head teacher. Another head teacher says, the moment we get a child moving to us with recognised special needs, we are already in deficit. That's another head teacher. The lack of funding is having a negative 3,033 in January this year. Last year, it was 2,712. That's nearly 300 just in this authority alone. The value of pupil premium funding designed to support the most disadvantaged pupils has fallen in real terms since 2015. I just find that this is appalling. It's having a negative effect on a whole generation of young people. Your government has put austerity in place and it continues to do so. And I find it absolutely appalling. We need to invest in our future, not let this generation down. And that's what this government is doing. Day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year. They're letting people down. And what's going to happen to the young people? Thank you.
Councillor Ishwood, as motion, you have the right to comply. The next item, your right to pay, no right to be, no matter can be reduced.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I take on board the comments made by Councillor Gert. Yes, these concerns about SEN, as Councillor Scott has pointed out, it is very much under pressure, and we are aware of that, and we try to do what we can. I thank everybody for their comments, and to move on.
Thank you. Right. Please show all those in favour of the motion. Please show those against the motion. Any abstentions? That is carried. The third and final motion is from Councillor Collins. Would you please move your motion to council?
I'm proud to move this motion today to support all of our NHS workers and ambulance workers taking industrial action across the country. Like so many of the people taking action, I'm both sad and angry that the government refused to listen, refusal to properly fund services, and refusal to engage in meaningful negotiations has led to this. Going on strike is the very last option for any worker. Losing pay, letting down people who rely on you, it is not what anyone wants. But what can you do when you graft through to breaking point through a global pandemic, when you see politicians clap your courage and commitment, but as usual, move on after? Ambulance staff have taken a 6% real terms pay cut, and they deserve better. But we all know that this isn't just about pay. Vacancy rates in the ambulance service are at the highest rates in years. A crumbling NHS means ambulances are queuing outside hospitals for hours, while patients in communities wait and wait and wait. One local dispatcher told me, the job is about getting the most appropriate, life-saving resource to the right patient at the right time. Unfortunately, due to pressures at the hospital, we now see crews tied up for extended periods of time, waiting hours outside the hospital, meaning they simply aren't available when the poorest patients need them the most. I used to be proud of my job. It was about saving lives, but recently, I'm ashamed of it. Time and time again, we look to send ambulances and we just don't have one to send. Patients are suffering. Patients are dying. It is not what I signed up for. It can't go on, and I can't go on anymore. Something has to change. Imagine that, colleagues. A dispatcher, working on our ambulances, saving lives, is ashamed of the job they are doing. It breaks my heart. Because there is no shame on our ambulance workers. There is shame on this government for refusing to fund our services, refusing to engage properly with unions, and refusing to honour their warm words and photo ops during the pandemic. I was speaking to a paramedic who said to me, I loved my job. I always knew it was never going to make me rich. But I do take offence at a 6% real terms pay cut. There is no money to pay us properly, but there is money to buy dodgy PPE or sell Royal Mail off at substantially lower rate than market value. We have had enough of this government taking the mickey out of us. Although, yes, we do get the social hours pay, that doesn't effectively remunerate the brutal shift pattern, the lack of breaks, the inevitable end of shift overtime, and the missed birthdays, Christmases and weekends you don't get to spend with your kids.
Yes, that's what I'm going to do.
In my own family, my sister recently dislocated her kneecap. She called for an ambulance and waited. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever dislocated a kneecap, but it hurts. She called back after an hour, then hour 2, then hour 3, and hour 4, still laying cold and in shock on the kitchen floor. Each time dispatchers had to tell her there was nothing they could do. There was just no ambulance to help. After 4 hours, she managed to get hold of some really strong painkillers and she put her kneecap back in herself. Now, this in itself will probably cost the NHS more in the long run because she's not a trained professional. Now she needs a GP's appointment, a referral, outpatient appointments, maybe follow-up treatment if it's not done right. And that's just dislocated kneecap. But I am a solution-oriented sort of person, so a few suggestions to those opposite that you could maybe take back to your ministers. Provide pay and conditions commensurate with the jobs at hand. And when you've got that right, train more people, because recruitment and retention is impossible without. You might save money on bank and agency fees too if you apply it across the whole NHS. Stop demanding more for less from a system that is crumbling. Cutting budgets does not cut demand. Sort out social care so beds aren't blocked, so that people can be treated, so that ambulances aren't queuing for hours, so people don't die waiting on floors,
30 seconds.
in hospitals, car parks, in corridors, on trolleys. The state of our NHS and ambulance workers on picket lines is a political choice. Ministers could get round the table in a serious way, do the responsible thing and recognise the contribution of ambulance workers and NHS. It does not have to be this way, and by supporting this motion, Wakefield councillors show our support, gratitude and love for the people who are taking industrial action right now for all of us who rely on our NHS.
I understand that you're altering your motion.
Very correctly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Jones, in seconding the motion, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
Speak now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I second Councillor Collins' motion in support of NHS, striking NHS ambulance staff today. Ambulance staff, which include paramedics, ambulance technicians, call handlers and assistant practitioners. They are just a few of us who are included in the strike. These are people who save lives every day. It's in their nature to protect and preserve life. Their decision to strike is not taken lightly, but based upon fair pay and staffing shortages. These same staff report that patient safety is at risk every day in the NHS. This is not just about pay. It is not reflected in soaring inflation and cost of living, but also to take a stand to protect the institution that is the NHS, which is crumbling. With regards to pay, NHS workers have seen a real pay reduction since 2010, whereby pay was frozen under austerity. Coincidentally, the independent pay review body was ignored at that point. Funny, they're not being ignored now, isn't it? The Enough Enough campaign reports that real pay is down £6,000 since 2010. 53% are struggling to cope with the demands of their jobs. Night queues at the emergency department are putting patients at risk. 1 in 3 have witnessed a patient death linked to a delay. The Wakefield Trust reports that the ambulance staff working conditions have been a concern for some time. Ambulance staff have consistently low levels of satisfaction, with evidence that this is worsened over the past year. Ambulance are queuing for emergency department handover due to a shortage of nurses, beds and staff. Recruitment and retention of NHS professionals is shocking, with my former nursing colleagues telling me that they'd be better off working at the local supermarket and are seriously considering leaving their jobs. These unprecedented NHS strikes are a call to this government to address concerns about the crumbling NHS. Investment is needed. The past 13 years has seen the NHS driven into the ground. We need a fully funded NHS to create a point of access, not backdoor privatisation. I urge the government to get back round the negotiating table. Solidarity to the NHS ambulance strikes taking part in this action to protect their patients, and solidarity to my former RCN colleagues taking the same action today to protect our NHS.
Councillor Haynes, I understand you've submitted an amendment to the motion. The amendment has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Councillor Haynes, would you please introduce your amendment?
Speak now?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, the amendment's been circulated and it illustrates the financial facts of the offer that's been made. Many of the residents I represent may look long and hard at those figures. People that don't have a strong minority union behind them. And it's a case of the most vocal bidding for the bigger slice of what is a very small cake. The elephant in the room is inflation, and I think that without inflation, the 4% would have been accepted without any issue. No need to strike or anything. The concept that you can beat inflation by succumbing to excessive wage demands is ill-conceived. Excessive wage demands will just fuel inflation, and inflation will just take you to a place you can't recover from. Some of them, as old as I am, have been there. I cannot agree to use the Wakefield Council as a spokesperson for a union. I was not elected or returned to do that, and I don't think many of you were either, but I'm recommending this amendment to the council. Thank you.
Is the amendment seconded? Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Right, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
Speak now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I rise to second the amendment. The government are continuing an open and honest dialogue with unions as to what is fair and affordable, and are bringing forward legislation to ensure a basic level of service across crucial sectors, consulting on adequate coverage, including ambulance services. The party opposite voted against it in the House of Commons on Monday night. We will always stand up for public safety and protect people against these distributive strikes. We seek to balance the right to strike with the people's right to access public services. We usually value the work of our public services, which is why we are committed to the independent peer review body process, accepting their recommendations in full across key sectors. In the face of strikes action, the government have set out contingency measures to help limited disruption, but we urge unions to get around the table and meet for constructive conversations about what is fair and affordable for public safety pay in 2023 and 2024, without embedding inflation or costing families more. The government will not ask ordinary families up and down the country to pay an extra £1,000 a year more to meet the pay demands of the union bosses. Pay deals have to be fair and affordable as we tackle inflation. We have implemented the recommendations of the independent pay review body, which has delivered the highest uplifts in nearly 20 years, with most awards targeted towards the lower pay. These pay review bodies take evidence from a range of organisations, including trade unions, and consider the need to recruit, train and motivate staff. I commend this amendment to Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
On the amendment, Councillor Rose.
You take your mic off, Councillor Hayes?
Councillor Sanders, you Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking against the amendment and in favour of the resolution, I give you today a big I'm afraid I'm getting warmed up now. I've sat here today and I've listened to various comments and concerns about issues around council matters, all the rest of it. From people across the border there over there, I've cast a border because I don't think sometimes I know what word you were in. I know what word I was in. I worked for 20 years proudly in the NHS. In that time, I saw more changes in structures. I saw what was then an increase in the structure and management, and at the same time, more demand on the services of the frontline staff. I certainly am proud of the work of the NHS in total and the frontline staff. And the ambulance service, I pay tribute to them, to what they have to deal with every day. There's all this business about getting around the table. Nobody wants to go on strike. I've been on strike when I was getting £0.5 wages, £0.5 increase. People going. I was lucky that I had a wage coming into the house. There's some of these people don't. But get around the table. Can we give you an example of get around the table? The Royal College of Nursing had longed for a meeting with Steve Barclay, longed for it, waited for it, and they were gladly then told that they were going to have that meeting to discuss the issues in terms of the situation of the nurses. The meeting that they had was for 45 minutes. That's a round table. Is that negotiation? Is it consultation? Because I don't believe that a lot of people know the difference between negotiation and consultation. Well, the situation has been outlined today over the second group of our resolution as opposed to yours, of the reality of what's happening in terms of the ambulances, the state of the NHS, and the crisis that's all around us. My paper earlier on was another crisis in the industry. We're getting a crisis all over the time. I had a position just before Christmas that I was looking out of my window, and I saw an elderly lady in distress. I went out and I brought her into my house, and I could see that she needed more help than I could give, and I phoned for the ambulance service, who kept me on the line asking me descriptions of the lady, her health and her abilities. And in 10 minutes, there was an ambulance to my house with two great strapping ambulance people dealing with her. And thank the Lord, that ambulance then took her on to Leeds, where she had to have some heart surgery. That's the kind of service we want, and that's the kind of work that these do in the ambulance service. But unfortunately, the crisis that's there at the moment, with ambulances turning up, with patients in them waiting for care, more care than the ambulance staff can give at times because they have to be prioritised through the system, to get into the accommodation and capacity that is not there. And can I remind our fellow colleagues across the room as well, that in the years of the Clegg and Conservative coalition, the first cuts in austerity took about £20 billion out of the NHS as a total. And ever since then, in terms of funding being put back in, it is a known fact that the growth element that's supposed to be put back has never really touched the surface of what was being taken out in funding. The problem that we have, combining all our services together, provides the whole story of health, is it's being cut and cut and cut to the bone. And those that are working on the front line are the people that are carrying those cuts on their shoulders day and day and day. And as I know and my colleagues know, they don't want to be out on strike. They're not striking just for the sake of striking. And when you're talking about pay,
30 seconds, Councillor Rhodes.
Please remember, the only influx and height of pay has been in the private sector. 7.3% in private sector growth as opposed to 3.3% in public services. That says everything about our services, that the ambulance people and everybody involved in the front line should not be having to take these decisions to provide health for our district.
Councillor Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I rise to support the resolution and oppose the amendment worth around 37% of basic pay, takes to 47,000. That includes some people having to work 70 hours a week. 70 hours a week. And then we go on to talk about this 11% ridiculous pay rise will cost this government £28 billion. But can you remember that Quartan Trust version of Army? That cost this government, it cost this country over £40 billion. £40 billion for a show that lasted 4 or 5 weeks before we decided to get the Gorilla 2 the clowns. And it's been touched on earlier. Nobody, and nobody, I speak from experience, goes on strike unless it's absolutely necessary. I went to strike 30 years ago for 15 months. It took me 15 years to recover from it. So people don't go on strike at all unless it's an absolute necessity. And then we have the audacity of clapping. And then we wanted to sack him. I'm sick to death of hearing about it either the Ukraine war, which we support, or it's COVID when it suits. And then we're going to talk about we need to write the case down. I'll tell you what, I wrote the case down. I'll tell you why I wrote the case down. Because on 7th of December, my granddaughter was taken out of school with an emergency. You must take her straight away to hospital and take her to hospital. She must have some emergency surgery on the 7th of December. Don't let her walk, don't let her wait there. She must stay off her feet. She finally had the operation 11 days later because there were no beds, there were no surgeons, there were no ambulances. Can I tell you what we were? There weren't any strikes on them days. These were our NHS service trying to operate with the numbers that we've got. So don't come in here today and start talking about people with minimum safety cover. There ain't no safety cover day in and day out. My wife works as a nurse, has worked for 30 odd years as a nurse. And last week she was at Pinderfields Hospital looking after 40 patients, two of them weren't with the minimum safety cover and they weren't on at all. So yeah, these people have got a God-given right to ask and to seek a fair settlement for the work that they do. And to sit there and start talking about country can't afford it. It's about political choices. It's about choices. And unless this country and the people in this country are prepared to look after, protect and pay people, or everybody in this room takes for granted when they're poorly, the world will be a better place. But to sit here today and try to suggest, and in a crap, pathetic worded amendment, it's beyond me. Reject the amendment and support the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how to see, but I fully agree with everything you said, and I fully oppose this dreadful and quite frankly hopeless amendment and support this and my solidarity to all the workers out on strike in the NHS over this winter. I have to say the opposition are living in a complete fantasy land from the rest of us apparently, painting this great picture of how the NHS is doing fine, how it's had lots of funding. It's your government and its political choices over the last decade that have brought our NHS to the brink of ruin. You've given it the worst funding settlement in its history. You talk about absolute funding, not about relative funding. Standards have got worse in every area. Record waiting lists. There was record patient satisfaction with the last Labour government. That's gone down the Swanee. You've got crises in pretty much every area of staffing, which led to the unsafe staffing levels my colleagues have alluded to. Why is that? Because you cut the nurses' bursary. You stopped providing subsidies for nurses to train. You have caused this crisis and you've got to own it. And the decent thing you could do is turn around and pay these NHS workers a decent amount of money. They're not asking for the earth. It's not just about their pay justice. It is about saving the NHS from its staffing crisis that it's in at the moment. I went down to the picket line to support NHS workers last week. There were cars and the public driving past. They were honking the horns in support. Every single one of them was supporting the action. You have called this absolutely wrong. Your government doesn't have a clue. You've attacked them rather than supporting them, and the public will never forgive you for what you do to the NHS at the moment. We'll fight for it in the Senate chamber, members of the public will, and they'll hold you to account in the ballot box. When my dad was terminal with cancer, it was the ambulance service that came to pick him up. And you talk about these workers being really generously paid, and perhaps being paid too much compared to some of our constituents. They are our constituents. The people that work in the NHS are our people. They're not some other different people. They work for us, they care for our relatives when on the cusp of death and sickness and illness. They deserve every penny that they're claiming. So I fully support this motion and oppose the amendment.
I did actually agree with part of the argument in favour of this amendment. If there wasn't any inflation, I mean, you are absolutely right. If there was no inflation, 4% would look an awful lot better than it does. But if you were looking to actually save money, to make the money for the NHS go a bit further, I think we need to look at the amount that's going out in various forms of privatisation. We've got the enormous amounts that go out in paying agencies the money instead of actually paying the staff properly so that you can actually recruit them and you don't need the agencies. Enormous money going to the agencies. Enormous money going on private finance initiative contracts that frankly are long overdue being needed to be cancelled. And that's without talking about the period when the COVID situation was exploited in order to give very, very dubious contracts to very, very dubious people. I honestly do think, Chair, that if the government was to try to take a more free market approach, given the recruitment and retention situation, we might well be seeing a payoff to the NHS staff, something a bit more like the average of about 7% that's currently being made in private sector employers. Not out of the goodness of their heart, but because something like 7% is actually at the moment, because unfortunately we do have inflation. 7% is something like the amount of money you need if you're going to actually recruit and retain staff. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking against the amendment. Having been in attendance on the picket lines, talking first hand to the NHS workers and hearing what they're experiencing really shows the day-to-day reality they're facing. I strongly urge colleagues and residents that haven't attended the picket lines to stand united and show strong support to these workers. This government has presided over 30 years of failure in our public services, and these workers have faced more than 10 years on pay cuts and now face the cost of living crisis. NHS pay is being cut severely. The average NHS pay is being cut over 20% since 2010. NHS workers are struggling to make ends meet with half of all NHS trusts setting up food banks for their own workers and taking out pay loads to survive to the end of the month. Staff are exhausted as workload soar and the demand for ambulance services has risen 10 times faster than resources. Waiting lists are growing because the NHS can't recruit staff that it needs. There's currently over 135,000 vacancies. This dispute is about the ambulance service. The crisis facing them means that 1/3 will leave delays have led to a patient death. I've seen here in Wakefield local government spending cuts over 50% in decades, which means community services in mental health and social care have been affected, causing bed blocking and putting more strain on our emergency services. We need action from the government to have a proper conversation with the unions, along with proper investment in the service and to ensure that these issues are solved. I will continue to firmly stand alongside all striking paramedics and ambulance staff on the picket lines. I therefore support Councillor Collins' motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll sort of think about two areas. The first about the peer review body. It says here that the government's committed to the peer review body process. We're 2-3% inflation. And it doesn't cope with the shock to the system that we have now. And the government should have the imagination to see that and to take action, rather than complaining it will be £1,000 for every household. You don't seem to be concerned that it's £3,000 to £4,000 for every household that's got a health worker in it, that people are subsidising us by the sort of pay cuts that they're experiencing through inflation. But the key thing I wanted to talk about was the last point, talking about disruptive strikes, balancing the right to strike with the right to public services. Now, before I retired from the health service, I was the union branch secretary for 25 years, which was where I've done sort of ongoing position. In that time, I helped organise 2 sets of industrial action. Now, it appears that the government's only just realised that when you have industrial action, you have emergency cover. But we've always had nobody that I think in the health service about these strikes without some sort of emergency cover arrangements. And you spend quite a lot of time working those out. But what I want to say to people, you look at something like what operates on, say, Christmas Day or a bank holiday, and the legislation that we're bringing in as a government is incredibly authoritarian. We're happy for trains not to operate at Christmas. We're happy for schools not to open at Christmas, but you're prepared to force people to work in those services as part of emergency cover. And the key thing about that is who decides? How's it going to be decided? As I say, in my experience in the health service, we work through the emergency cover arrangements that's based on a significant element. If you require it, not only the human rights issues, and remember it was the Conservative Party that came up with the European Convention of Human Rights. Yeah. But apart from the human rights issues that you're sort of compromising here, you also contrast the goodwill that exists between local managers and trade unions when it comes to emergency cover. You will be solving massive problems for future industrial action in the health service. So I oppose this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
I think, to be fair, everything's been covered really well. I just want to say one brief thing. That 3 years ago, I was unlucky enough to fall. And the ambulance service did pick me up relatively quickly 3 years ago. But I'll tell you what, when I got outside the hospital, unfortunately, rather fortunately, I was with 2 really top-notch ambulance people, but I had to wait an hour and a half in the ambulance. This is before, by the way, the Ukrainian war, and before the pandemic, and before Wakefield. And they certainly looked after me, and then they shut off when they delivered me into that particular hospital. And the second thing that I want to raise is, I was in the hospital for quite a while, and I was laid in a bed one day, and 2 beds down, there was an individual, a pensioner. And unfortunately, they were hoping to operate on this pensioner, but unfortunately, they couldn't. And so, they were talking about how they would get this chap home. What a conversation. I'm sat there listening to this conversation, and the nurses and doctors were horrified because they couldn't get him home because they couldn't have the treatment at all. That was it's not the start. We all know what the issue with that, social care. And nobody's talking about that. They're all talking about strikes and these people. And I'll tell you, my son was a paramedic for a number of years, and he finished about 3 years ago. And it was nothing to do with pay, what you guys seem to think it's all about. You didn't deserve that pay. It was because he was fed up with what he was seeing day in and day out. And that's what they did. He said, I can't go anymore. I'll finish with it. What you don't understand when you're talking about pay on that side, now I'm or Causeway, but that was certainly part of the issue of what this trust and all the sort of talk on inflation is a lot of rubbish. Steve's covered it. It's what this country can afford to pay what it wants to do in particular areas, but it chooses not to pay in those areas. And what we need to do is there needs to be a sensible conversation about what we want. And what we want in this country is a good ambulance service, a good NHS service, and a good social care service. That's what needs to be sorted out, and until everybody gets around and talks about that, you're going to keep seeing ambulances queuing outside of hospitals. You're going to still see people getting shifted out. And don't forget what this government did when you talk about this government. You shifted out people during COVID into care homes, and you did. So it needs looking at. And then when you come up with a stupid amendment, because it is a stupid amendment, and half day, and you've got that wrong by the way, but I won't go into that. When you come up with a stupid amendment, right, you really need to start thinking about the effect and about what the real issues are. And that's why I'm 100% behind the motion, and certainly not against stupid amendments that come forward like that.
Councillor Hunt.
It's been great seeing up here, I will say. It's a real thrill. So, you know, bursaries. This government, some years ago, cancelled nursing bursaries. What nurses that don't want to actually have a system where we train nurses? Stupid. I said it was stupid at the time. Yeah. So, going back to the last Labour government, PFI, £225 million hospital cost 1.2 billion to buy. There's no excuse for this, right? The company that financed it is South Africa. I forget what its profit margin was, but it was absolutely outrageous. Based in Mayfair, and you know, you did 222 PFI deals, and paying those back comes from frontline care. You know, you can't. You know, at the end of the day, it takes the cake, and somewhere along the line, you know, so it's not entirely the government's fault. I mean, some of it's the last Labour government. You bought millions of operations, spent millions on operations, but you didn't send anybody on. So let's stop pretending that you're archangels, because you're not. You know? Now, our former MP, the prisoner of Centre, right, asked me, like you know, I don't like to beat around the bush, right? He asked me, what is it I can do for Wakefield that will really do, you know, really meaningful? This is very true, very true. I should have said resign. But I didn't. What I said to him was, try and get Hancock to cancel that PFI deal on the hospital. And he told me that he had. But it was probably a lie, like what the other thing. So, well, you can sue me if you want, you know, I mean, libel's libel. I don't imagine you're going to get very far, but we think legal officer. We know the rules. So, you're under arrest. If you need any help out, so I'm happy to help. So, 6%, the last time I checked on a report, was carried out by the BBC, 6% of hospital services have been privatised. 4.4% of that 6% was Labour who did it. The Tories did it at 1.6%. You know, you can't have it all your own way. You're not entirely innocent in any of this. And what I'm really going to say is that I only hope that Councillors Keith and Councillor Tully are so supportive of strikes if the firemen vote to go out on strike. Because I don't suppose you probably will be. Well, jolly if you are. But you know, let's see if you're supportive of them if you are. Because the strikes at the end of the day, when you strike for money, you usually lose more money than you ever gain. And I hope nobody really does go on strike, because the consequences could be dire, especially for people like me, who might need a job starting. But don't worry about it, because I'm not.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, when I first read this motion, I had to do a little bit of soul searching, because as a basic principle, I'm against anybody in frontline work having the ability to strike. When I started my working life out, I started out in the military, in the army, and of course the military doesn't have the right to strike. And as a basic principle, you know, I believe that anybody who is in a job where lives could be potentially put at risk by them not being there shouldn't have the right to strike. But they shouldn't need the right to strike because they should be paid a fair wage. And if I had a magic wand and could go pick, path, poof and give them an example, they'd be guaranteed a wage rise every year of the rate of inflation, 2%, and then they wouldn't need the need to strike. But we ain't there, are we? We're where we are. So I fully understand why they're out on strike, and I sympathise with them. And it was interesting when Councillor Collins did her initial speech, and she spoke about her sister with a dislocated knee. Because the exact same thing happened to my daughter, my youngest daughter. And that was 10 years ago. And it took an hour. And we got a fast responder to come out. Just in a car, so she couldn't take her. But being last paramedic. And she's given her pain relief, and she's given her the gas and air. And she had 4 bottles of gas and air, which she went through. And every time an ambulance was allocated to come get my daughter, it was diverted elsewhere. This is 10 years ago. This is how long this has been going on. Yeah. And it ended up where this fast responder is in tears herself because the ambulance is getting cancelled. And it was actually 5.5 hours before an ambulance come to take my daughter. And she lived in Leeds. That's where she still lives, in Leeds. The ambulance came from Sheffield. It's ridiculous. And I take the point that, you know, Labour, you're not completely innocent. The underfunding in the NHS has gone through successive governments over a number of years. But I listened to Keir Starmer on Sunday on the Laura, I call her Doomsburg, I can't pronounce her name, she's got normal full of doom and gloom. It was quite a good interview, and he said in that interview, he said, you've got to compare the NHS over the last 13 years with the NHS of the last 13 years of the Labour government. And he was right, it was better. It was better. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than it is now. So I was struggling with this because of my basic beliefs. And then I read the Conservative amendment. And I thought, you know, I sat there and I've got a solid wood coffee table in front of where I sit here. And I felt like smacking the head off the coffee table in frustration. And then I thought, I better not do that because I might fracture my skull. You know, and then I'll need an ambulance. And I might get it at Christmas time. And the final point I met to a colleague over in the corner who mentioned Nick Clegg. You learn from what you get wrong. We got that one wrong.
I agree with Nick.
Yeah. You learn from what you get wrong. We'll not mess up mistake again. So, yeah, after lots of searching, what things about it, and being deciding what to do, I've decided I will support the motion and vote against the amendment.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it has never stopped amazing me how every time the colleagues opposite can weaponize this NHS debate. Every time. And if you use NHS as political football, I think you guys are all quite good strikers. But remember this, we the Conservatives here are the real goalkeeper of NHS, because NHS under the Conservative government longer than under Labour government, and you go out and say that, okay? So when you talk about NHS, as if we here demonize the on this side of the bench, as if we don't do it. It's nothing to do with us. I can tell you, I don't normally come out with personal attacks, but I was at NHS on Christmas Eve with my husband, and you know, we can understand, appreciate how hard working the nurses and also the doctors, student doctors are working at NHS or all the other departments of NHS, okay? So we are here talking about the same issue. But how we can make it better? Not by blowing hot air here in this council. So how many care homes you have built in this council in the last 20, 30 years? How many you have built new care homes to make sure you don't block the staff? And also what we are looking for is a minimum service level to actually keep the work, keep the public safe. That's all the government concern is keep the public safe. Strike fine. But also, please, Park Holland asked for 19%, okay? This is a public, isn't it? Why can't she say 10% instead? To start off with, instead asking the government to meet the halfway. That's not sincere. Sorry to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've debated this now, and I propose we move to the vote, please.
So, right, if you close the proposal motion. Okay. Can we therefore say, just go for the vote, please?
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
Only a question on the amendment.
So only the question on the amendment. Have the vote, please. All in favour of the amendment? It's been a call for closure, Councillor Haynes. Oh, sorry. So, all those in favour of the motion? The amendment. The amendment. The amendment. The amendment. All those against the amendment? Right, so the amendment is lost. So now we go back to the original motion. As with the motion, does anybody else want to speak on this motion now? I think I'm really premature, can't be why. Right, okay. Councillor Collins has moved the motion. Do you wish to reply before we take a motion to the vote?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome contributions from colleagues across the chamber. There's been some really heartfelt, passionate and touching ones. There's also been lots of delusional ones from members opposite, including Councillor Wood, but we'll leave it there for today. I'd like to request a recorded vote on this, Mr. Mayor, because I want all NHS workers to know who in this chamber stand with them, value them, and know that they deserve better.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Right, I've had a request for a recorded vote on this matter before continuing. Is that request demanded by at least 4 other members of the council? I think that is a yes. Right, so we now have to go through for the recorded vote on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors will take the recorded vote in the normal way. I'll read out the name of the councillor. If you could indicate whether you are for the motion, against it, or whether you wish to abstain. Has Councillor Ahmed left the chamber now, please? Councillor Ali?
For.
Councillor Eyre?
For.
Councillor Ayub?
For.
Councillor Bates? Councillor Binns?
Abstain.
Councillor Byford?
For.
Councillor Carrington? For. Councillor Collins? For. Councillor Cummings? For. Councillor Dagger?
For.
Councillor Farmer? Councillor Ferguson? For. Councillor Fishwick? Has he gone? Councillor Forster?
For.
Councillor Gert?
For.
Councillor Glover?
Abstain.
Councillor Graham?
For.
Councillor Haynes?
Abstain.
Councillor Harvey?
Abstain.
Councillor Hayes? Councillor Hemingway?
For.
Councillor Heptonstall's away. Councillor Heckworth? Councillor Homewood?
Stay.
Councillor Mr Isherwood? Councillor Mrs Isherwood? Councillor Jeffrey? Councillor Jones? Councillor Keith? Councillor Kitchen? Councillor Malkin? Councillor Massey? Councillor Mouseman? Councillor Medford? Councillor Mitchell? Councillor Morley? Councillor Nichols? Councillor Pickersgill? Councillor Rhodes? Councillor Sanders?
Abstain.
Councillor Scott? Councillor Shaw? Councillor Spate? Councillor Swift? Councillor Tennant? Councillor Tennant King? Councillor Tully? Councillor Vickers? Councillor Wallace? And Mr Mayor, do you wish to vote?
No.
And the Deputy Mayor, do you wish to vote? Thank you.
Right.
Do we have the numbers? Word plans.
Alright, for the motion 39, abstentions 10. Motion's carried. Right, colleagues, it is now dark outside. That suggests that that's the last item on the agenda. Thank you all for your attendance. Let's hope next time you don't have to wear so many coats and scarves. Now declare the council meeting closed.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding whilst the Mayor leaves the council chamber.